Buongiorno. How are we all today? Yes, I'm out of breath. It's been one of those days. Oh, it's all good. It's all good. What have you lot been up to? What's going on? Wow. I did email you the link, Jake. Oh, I'm gutted now. Oh, I love that Nick Pope. I thought he's brilliant. I tried to email him when I was doing UFOs. Get on my channel. No way. 60 after battling with cancer. 60 years old. Oh, Nick Pope. I'm gutted. I liked him. He always comes across as like very sincere what he talks about. But, he was known as the real Fox Mulder, wasn't he? I don't know if you know about that. But yeah, I'm gutted. I'm gutted. What a way to start a stream with Nick Pope. Oh, yeah, get your tinfoil hats on. Good evening. Would you like to know what I've been up to today? I have photographic evidence. Ladies and gents, look at me scraping the bloomin' door. God's sake. State of that. Scrapey, scrapey. Then more scrapey, scrapey. Then I had to sand it down. And then I painted it. Whee! Look at that. From that to that to that. Whee! That's how you decorate a door, mate. I am professional. Let's do it again. Douche, douche, douche. Hey, I'll tell you what, no aliens touched that door. It was all me. How you doing, Jake?
Hello, how are you?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. So I literally...
you must be knackered after doing that.
Mate, I'll tell you what, I'm that unfit. My back's killing me. I was trying to have my dinner and my little finger on my thumb kept cramping. It was an absolute bloody nightmare. But yeah, I'm trying to bend up.
Yeah, looks like you did a good job of it, though.
I got there, but I'll give it another slight sand down tomorrow and paint it. But I had to rehang it quickly before I started it because wife is downstairs on her own. I thought we can't leave the door not hung. But we bought we changed all the handle, the letterbox, and the peephole was all silver. So we went out and bought all gold. You know, why not? It's like black and gold, isn't it? But I haven't put that on. I had to quickly put all the silver stuff back on because I've got to make some changes. Done all that, got up here and I was like, oh, that's not bad. Like, 14 minutes to go. And I was like, I haven't emailed Jake the link. Crap. Oh, but
not to worry.
Not to worry. Kind of funny and all. But yeah, like I said to you, mate, I got like something through saying about like, actually I can show you. I'll bring it up so you can actually see it. Like to do with the what was it? Oh, I've gone brain dead. The 18-minute thing.
Yeah. The audio.
Yes, all that. I thought, I've literally edited it, and like every minute or two, it's sort of the picture changes. So you've got something to look at while it's going through. Really went out my way for that, and it's come up saying about like copyright. I was like, hang on a minute, but it's saying a song called "The Pocket Gods." Let me show you this. I was like, what are you on about? I'll show you my screen because you can't see anything else at the back end there. So, but have a look. It's saying there, see that little square, that tiny square.
Yeah.
That's at 13 minutes 57 up to 14 minutes 35. That little bit in there, apparently Rendlesham, the Pocket Gods, like audio, and the claimant is WMG. You're not allowed to play it. So obviously, the take actions, I can't do anything because I've actually queried it. Do you know what I mean? To say, hang on, it's all in the public domain. That makes no sense. I'm just going to have to mute that 38 seconds. But that's stupid.
That is really stupid. Really stupid. And perhaps it's just a sign that it's part of the cover-up. Who knows?
Yeah. Ooh. I hope I didn't have an alien arrest me or something, you know.
I've been looking forward to talking about this because I've never, ever spoken about it before, ever. So that's a first. It's something that has interested me since I first heard of it in the 90s. And it's an important story for me because when I was younger, my mum quite often used to take us to Rendlesham Forest, and we used to watch the airplanes coming in and out over bent waters, and could identify what ones they were, and it was all quite exciting. And I remember once when we were there, we were just watching them coming into land and took a picture, and the military police came over and said, no, you can't take pictures here, you need to leave the site immediately. And it was the first time I'd ever seen anyone carrying a machine gun, so that was quite an experience.
Why would they feel that you're a threat?
Well, that's what we'll get to in just a moment. But you weren't allowed to take any pictures anywhere near there at that particular time. So it was very, very secretive. And it's important, I think, before we look into the story, to actually establish what the context was, because I don't think this gets looked into enough when people discuss this story. And obviously, there's a lot of videos about this. There are lots of books about it. I'm not going to tell you anything that isn't already out there. There's nothing new. All I can do is try and put together my take on what I can see, and then you can decide for yourselves. And I'm going to just base it on primary evidence to start with. So the actual evidence from 1981 that was collected, and look at what that says and contextualize things, because from that I think that you can put together a defensible argument for what happened. But then there are all the later additions that complicate the story further that obviously we'll look into as well. So Rendlesham is a forested area near Woodbridge, near Ipswich area in Suffolk, probably about 25 miles away from where I live. And like I say, I used to go there quite a bit as a child. I didn't know anything about the story at that point, but obviously I knew that Bent Waters was there. I knew there was something secret about it because obviously you couldn't take pictures, and there were military police there. And I knew that there was a place called Orford Ness that was nearby as well, that was a top secret place, but nobody actually knew what went on there. It was apparently something to do with radar or something like that, but no one really knew, and you didn't really talk about it. Now, I'll talk a bit more about Orford Ness in a bit, but just to contextualize what Bent Waters was and why it was there, I think it's worth pointing out its purpose, because this, I think, is a part of the story that is really, really under discussed. So RAF Bent Waters was designated as a nuclear strike base. So this wasn't somewhere where they had the big missiles that they would fire. This was somewhere where they had reasonably fast jet planes, such as the A-10 or the F-111, I think they had, where they would take a literal gravity bomb, just an ordinary bomb that you drop, a nuclear one that was a tactical nuclear bomb that would have been used if Russia had invaded through the Eastern European countries, because the big fear was that Russia had a lot more men, a lot more equipment than we did, and so if we were to drop tactical nukes on them and stop their army, that might prevent things from escalating further, but of course it might have the opposite effect. So that's what this base was designed for. It was primarily there as a rapid deployment team. so they could be ready to launch within 15 minutes of receiving the message. So this just wasn't any airbase. This was a serious airbase, and it had on site at all times, although it was denied for years, nuclear weapons. And the nuclear weapons could only be accessed by a two-man team. So just like you would see in the films from the 80s, where you'd have to have one person put in a key and the other person would have to put in a key, and it would have to be turned at the same time. They'd have to put in a code as well. And often these bombs, they weren't actually ready to go. They were disassembled. So they'd have to be put together, and that would obviously prevent accidents from happening and would keep the nuclear parts separate. And they were kept in underground bases. Now, 1980 is quite an important year for this, because this is when the events occur. But it's quite a time of unrest. So this is probably the last sort of stage of the Cold War. And at this point in time, you had in Poland, there was the Solidarity movement, which ultimately posed a direct challenge to communism and helped to bring it down. And you also had the Russians had just invaded Afghanistan, and the US had decided to be a bit more aggressive than they had been in the 70s. And they were starting to get into rearmament again. And there was quite clear hostility. The US refused to attend the Olympics in 1980. So tension was high. And the story that we're about to look into is taking place in somewhere that is on the front line, probably one of the most important and secret places in the country at that time. So that's why they wouldn't let us take any pictures when we were trying on that one time. But that's not the only thing in the area, though. There is also very close by Orford Ness, which I mentioned earlier. And Orford Ness it's a really long sort of sandbank that is just off the coast of Orford. You can only access it by river, so you can't get to it any other way other than by boat. And it kind of looks like a long snake, literally just hanging off the coast. So yeah, there you can see it. Where we've got the lighthouse is clearly mentioned there on the right. That's important. But you can see that it's just this long strip of land separated by two rivers in there. And this place was set up before World War I as a place for testing bombs. Bomb testing, they did all kinds of experiments there, one of which was apparently commissioned by the government to build a death ray that Tesla had invented. And apparently the chap who tried to do it, I think his name was Watts, very strange name. He tried it, and apparently he said, no, it's impossible, you can't do it. But I have found out if you use radio waves, you can discover if aircraft are coming in. And so he invented radar from that particular place there. So it's very, very secretive for both of the world wars. And then after that, it was used for atomic weapons research, where not the actual nuclear part of it, they would test the bomb components, they would test G-forces, wind tunnels, they'd drop them, all kinds of things like this. And they also did things with electromagnetic energy, which they would blast onto the ionosphere as a sort of radar to try and see what Russia were up to. Now, just before they built this big sort of radar station they built in the early 70s, which was called Cobra Mist, it needed a lot of power. And purely by coincidence, I'm quite sure, just a couple of miles down the road, they built a nuclear power station at the same time. So you've got a place there that's top secret. You can't get to it by any other way other than boat, that now has not only the license to do pretty much whatever it likes on this short piece, this strip of island. It's now got the opportunity to get as much power as it likes, so it can pretty much produce high energy weapons if it wanted to. And none of this is something that's ever been released. It's still all top secret now. You can kind of guess what sort of things happened there, but that, I think, adds to the situation that we've got here. So we've got a top secret weapons testing place that the public don't know about, and that the military barely acknowledge. You've then got a top secret nuclear strike base that's got nuclear weapons stored on site. And that, I think, is somewhere that's pretty much a high security area. And it's somewhere that, like I said, people knew there was something going on there, but it wasn't something that people were worried about or anything like that. It was just, oh, that they're there. There was one other thing in the area as well that I just wanted to mention as a personal anecdote, really, which is that they also had in the area RAF Mildenhall, which is where they would quite often fly the SR-71 Blackbird, which was the spy plane that would fly on the edge of space. It was the fastest plane, still is the fastest plane ever. And that was rumoured, even in the 80s, they were still saying that that was secret. But I was fortunate enough when I was younger, I was given a book of aircraft. So I knew what aircraft looked like. And one of the books and one of the pictures in there wasn't a photograph, it was a drawing. And it said classified next to it. And it just happened to be the Blackbird. And one afternoon, I was in the garden whilst my mum was hanging out the washing, and there was this enormous sound, and then this huge black plane, really low, flying over, clearly said USAF underneath it, on its way in daylight, landing at Mildenhall. And I knew what it was because I had that book, and like I say, that was still regarded as a secret plane even then. Absolutely wonderful plane. I want to go and see it. They've got one at Duxford. Amazing. And it could take pictures from literally on the edge of space. It could take a photograph where you could make out a number plate on a car. And this was in the 60s. Yeah. And the only reason they stopped using it is because it was so expensive to run it, and they can use satellites or drones instead now. And it was the reason that it was so fast, or built to be so fast, was because it didn't carry any weapons, because it was so fast it could outrun any missile that were fired at it. So that was kept. It wasn't all the time at Mildenhall. It was there when needed, and it would be used fairly regularly, usually at night. So the fact that I saw it in the daytime was quite remarkable. And that really goes to show that small corner which you just had the map for there earlier on, you've got a nuclear power station, you've got a spy plane that's secret, you've got secret weapons testing area, and you've got a secret or nuclear ready base, ready to drop nuclear bombs within 15 minutes. So there's our context, and I think that is really, really important. So that's the SR-71, absolutely fantastic. I think it could fly at 3 times the speed of sound. And that design was from the 60s, and it wasn't even acknowledged until the 80s, which is why in my book it had a drawing of it instead of a photograph. But absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing thing. So yeah, there's our context. So this isn't any environment. This isn't your ordinary airbase. So they would have on all the time, 24 hours a day, they had armed military guards and military police and extra security around the nuclear storage area, which was also double fenced, and you had to have codes to get in. So this wasn't a place that someone could easily get into without being detected. This was somewhere that was top security, absolute maximum. And it's also, we have to remember, it's 1980, so we haven't got CCTV like we would have today. We don't have the infrared sensors that they would have today, so a lot of it would have been done based on visuals. That sounds about right. 2002 miles per hour. Yeah, I think it got from London to New York in, I think it was about an hour and 15 minutes.
No.
Yeah.
Blimey, I could use that to escape the missus next time then.
No, you should. I see, just before we move on to what happened, Pouncey said, is the base still working? Yes and no. It stopped working as an airbase in 93, but the buildings are still there. You can go and visit a Cold War museum there, and there was housing there for the airmen, which I think is still there, and they've built up on that as well. So it's kind of like a living area now. And when my mum was younger, she said that she used to go and do babysitting for people on the site because she lived very near there. And it was great because they could get you things like cheap Levi jeans and, you know, things like that, films that hadn't come out yet. There was that sort of cultural aspect as well. So let's have a look at what happened then.
I'll tell you, one thing that did surprise me, mate, while I was, I found 2 websites and had everything on it, and I was like, this is just the nuts. But one thing that I didn't realize is it actually involved 2 air bases.
Yeah. Because
they were witnessing from, Bentwaters and Woodbridge, and I was like, I never knew that. I honestly thought it was always just one. So that blew me away. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, they call them the twin bases, or that's what they used to call them. And in between them is Rendlesham Forest. So you've got Woodbridge one side, Bentwaters the other. And Woodbridge was the UK one, and the Bentwaters were the US one. But often they're combined together. People normally, when they say Bentwaters, they would mean both of them. But you're quite right to query that. One thing that is quite interesting I discovered, I don't know why this is important, but for some reason, even though it doesn't have that much there, Woodbridge takes 3 times as much power as Bentwaters. So maybe that's where they were actually storing the nukes. Don't know why that is. There's a lot of strange things about this. So let's go ahead then and see what happened on that night. So this is Boxing Day 1980, and
is there anything you want to put on screen? You should have the ability to do that, or
all I've got here is just notes. I don't know if people would be interested in my bullet points.
Okay. No worries.
But it might be worth looking at some of them when we get to the actual statements. That would be really good, because then we can look at word for word what they've said, because I've just got a few quotes from them. And
I've got affidavit stuff, which I kept just to show you like that. I'm not really going to see anything on that one, but I've got stuff like that.
That would be great. So it's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's Boxing Day 1980. It's still. There's no wind, no weather, nothing like that. Obviously, it's cold, probably a bit icy. As it's near the coast, you quite often get in Suffolk patches of mist that seem to. It's different from normal mist. It sort of sits in dips, and it looks like it's just sitting there, and you have to walk in it and through it like a cloud sort of thing. It's very peculiar, but that may or may not be relevant depending on how you view what actually happens. So a call comes in at 3 o'clock in the morning that lights have been seen going down in the forest. So the protocol for that is that this could possibly be a crash. This could be an intrusion in our airspace. This is a high level alert. And so instantly a team is sent out to patrol, go straight into the forest to identify what this threat might be. That's the diagram that we will certainly be talking about that. So remember, at this point, it's just lights. They've been told there are unusual lights. It's a possible crash, possible intrusion. So a patrol of, I believe it's 3 men, but some accounts differ. But the 2 we want to focus on are Jim Penniston and John Burrows. And Penniston is the one who drew the diagram that you can see that's on the screen just there, the triangular craft, which we will, of course, be discussing, like I say, at length. So what I'm trying to do when I go through this, just so that everyone can understand my methodology, is I've looked at the statements that were given only, and I've looked at what the protocol would be for the base, because I've never seen anyone actually look at it in that way. Because I thought, if we look at it that way, that will show us where there should be paperwork. And it certainly does show us where there should be paperwork. But at this point, the response that they're doing is exactly what they should be doing. There's a threat, go out and see what it is. So on this night, they go out, and according to Jim Penniston, they saw an object which was, and I quote, definitely mechanical in nature. It was described as triangular in form, as we just saw, with coloured lights. It was very close to him in proximity. He didn't mention its speed or its height or any noise. And it's worth remembering, Jim Penniston is a serving airman in the US Air Force. He was an expert spotter of aircraft. He's a trained military observer. And interestingly, when he handed in his evidence, there's a chap called Fred Buran wrote a statement just clarifying what he'd seen. And he specifically mentions in it that Jim Penniston is a reliable character. And although he seemed agitated, he was reliable. Now, this is the notebook that all of the military personnel would have had to jot down everything that they saw. So all of those things, crucial evidence. We'll be talking about that a bit more as well. Now, there isn't anything in his initial report that mentions the distance or the size. It doesn't mention anything about touching anything, and it doesn't mention anything about structural details. It's just described as definitely mechanical in nature. So at this point, we can see that a patrolman in a high security nuclear area has said there's something out there that looks triangular, has got strange lights on it, and is in the woods and shouldn't be there. So he has to escalate. That's why he went to this chap, Fred Buran. Fred Buran was the Air Force Office of Special Investigations individual for the site. So he would look into anything weird, he would look into crime. That's why he was then involved. Interestingly, you would have expected after a case like this for him to have submitted a report or done an investigation. But the only evidence we have from him is that initial report that he did, where he verified what Penniston told him he'd seen. Right. Burrows, on the other hand, did not verify what Penniston had seen. He didn't mention seeing a craft. He only mentioned lights. So it's important to notice the difference there in the two descriptions. Now, you can get the transcripts of this online. It's all easily available. There's nothing hidden about this. So if you want to read the statements in full, you can, but I'm just going to give you little quotations to help you to understand what's going on. So at this point, Fred Buran, the Special Investigations Officer, knows he does not have to report to the base commander. He operates under a different jurisdiction. So that's why I say it's interesting that we don't hear from him again regarding this, because we should do. So what happened instead is this was escalated to the deputy base commander, a man named Charles Halt. And at this point, this would be considered non-trivial. It's something that's operationally relevant. This is a high to critical security threat to the base. And they are doing everything that they can with the protocols. And they went out in the daytime, had a look around, took some equipment with them, like a Geiger counter, and they took some measurements and plaster casts. They found 3 indentations in a triangular pattern in the ground. And that evening, the lights were seen again. So Halt takes out with him a 5-man team. Again, he takes his Geiger counter, takes a tape recorder, takes a camera as well that's mentioned. He takes equipment for collecting samples, and he also takes a star scope, which was a really early version of night vision. So it's got all the gadgets he needs. And at this point, because it's gone to the deputy base commander, this is really, really serious. He's taken over now. He notices amongst these lights, and this is the famous audio, so I don't know if we might want to listen to that, but I'll just mention the quotes I've got here to listen out for. He mentions unusual lights. He says that it breaks into 5 separate white objects, that it moves rapidly in sharp angular movements, and that it beamed down a stream of light. And this is really, really important evidence, because this isn't him writing a report afterwards. This is him actually there at the time telling us what he can see. And more importantly, when we listen to it, you can hear the tone in his voice as well about what he is thinking. So yeah, I don't know if we want to risk this copyright infringement.
Let me just have I want to have a look at the timestamp, because I've got one like the 18th one, but
the bit that's interesting starts at about 12 minutes in. That's when he starts to see the lights.
Yep, and it's I'll write this down so I don't forget the bit where it's going copyright, because basically it says when that comes up or it detects it, it says like remove it, or whatever company will claim all funds and monetization fees. Right. Do you know what I mean? Which is a bit weird, but it's a bit weird because it's at the bit, because well, I'm not going to say what bit, obviously, but 1357 to 1435 is the bit, and it's right smack probably in the bit that I would have chosen as well, because it mentions 200 meters and blah blah blah, but
well, it doesn't matter, because if we can hear a bit of it, that would be great, just so that people that haven't heard it can just get a feel for what actually happened.
I wonder if I could actually was it the bit I've got? Maybe I can do it on here, because then I can see when it hits the square bit, can't I?
Yeah.
1557. So that might be the. Let me share that then. That'll probably be the best.
To remind everyone, this is the Lieutenant Colonel, Deputy Base Commander of a nuclear strike ready base. So this is now gone to a high to critical threat. This is about as serious as it could get. And he takes his tape recorder to record what is said, but somewhere on there he says that he doesn't record all of it because he needed to save the battery. So it does. There are pauses and there are bits that are missing because he didn't record it.
And you say about 12 minutes?
Yeah, about 12 minutes.
11:59. That's close enough. Because what we could do, it can go up to about that 1:57. I can then pause it, jump, and then we can carry on from the 2:35 if you like.
Yeah, that would be great. And just before we press play, though, it's worth mentioning that I think this is probably the best. This is the best evidence that exists for any encounter of this nature, because it is somebody who is of a high rank in a serious situation who's recording it in the moment and not afterwards. So this is, for a researcher like me, this is gold dust.
Yep, agreed.
It's some type of abrasion or something in the ground where the pine needles are all pushed back. When we get a high reading, about deflection of 2 to 3, maybe 4, depending on the point on it. Yes. So there's a positive after effect? Yes, there is definitely. That's on the 7th spot. There is an after effect. What's that mean? means when the lights are turned off, once we are focused in and allow time for the eyes to adjust, we are getting an indication of a heat source coming out of that center spot, which will show up on heat or some form of energy. It's hardly heat at this stage of the game. Looking directly overhead, one can see an opening in the trees plus some freshly broken pine branches on the ground underneath. Looks like some of them came off about 15 to 20 feet up. Some small branches about an inch or less in diameter. 0148, we're hearing very strange sounds out of the farmer's barnyard animals. It's very, very active, making an awful lot of noise. Wasn't a pigmentation. You just saw a light where? Wait, slow down. Where? Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the tree. There it is again. Watch straight ahead off my flashlight there, sir. There it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it? We don't know, sir. So can I get some word? Yeah, it's a strange, small red light. Looks to be out maybe a quarter to half mile, maybe further out. I'm going to switch off. The light is gone now. It was approximately 120 degrees from the site. Is it back again? Yes, sir. Oh, that's the flashlight, sir. Let's move out to the edge of the clearing so we can get a better look at it. See if you can get the star scope on it. The light's still there, and all the barnyard animals have gotten quiet now. Yeah, we're heading about 110 to 120 degrees from the site, out through to the clearing now. Still getting a reading on the meter. About 2 clicks. About it, there's some type of strange flashing red light ahead. There's yellow. I saw a yellow tinge in it too. Weird. It appears to be maybe moving a little bit this way. It's brighter than it has been. Yellow. It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird. To the left. Yeah, definitely moving to the left. Two lights. One light to the front, okay. One light to the left. Keep the flashlights off. There's something very, very strange. Keep the headset on. See if it gets any stronger. Okay. Give us a rundown. Notation that this is on a beta reading too. It's on a beta reading? The beta shield has been removed. Okay. Pieces are falling off it again. It just moved to the right. Yeah. Dropped to the right. Strange. Oh, why don't you go left? Let's approach to the edge of the woods up there. You want to do without lights? Just do it carefully. Come on. Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. It's still moving from side to side. And when you put the star scope on it, it sort of has a hollow center, a dark center. It's like the pupil of an eye looking at you and winking. And the flash is so bright to the star scope that it almost burns your eye. We passed the farmer's house and across in the next field. Now we have multiple sightings of up to 5 lights with a similar shape and all, but they seem to be steady now rather than a pulsating or glow with a red flash. We just crossed the creek, and we're getting what kind of readings now. Getting through 3 good clicks on the meter, and we're seeing strange lights in the sky. 244, we're at the far side of the second farmer's field, and made sighting again about 110 degrees. This looks like it's clear off to the coast. It's right on the horizon. Moves about a bit and flashes from time to time. Still steady or red in color. Also, after negative readings in the center of the field, we're picking up slight readings, 4 or 5 clicks now on the meter. 305, we see strange strobe-like flashes to the rather sporadic, but there's definitely something, some kind of phenomenon. 305, at about 10 degrees horizon directly north, we've got 2 strange objects, half-moon shape, dancing about with colored lights on them. But guess to be about 5 to 10 miles out, maybe less. The half-moons have now turned into full circles. There's all there was an eclipse or something there for a minute or two. 0315, now we've got an object about 10 degrees directly south, 10 degrees off the horizon. And the ones to the north are moving, one's moving away from us. Moving out fast. This one on the right's heading away too. Yeah, we're both heading north. Okay, here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal. 330, 0330, and the objects are still in the sky, although the one to the south looks like it's losing a little bit of altitude. we're turning around and heading back toward the base. The object to the south is still beaming down lights to the ground. 0400 hours, one object still hovering over Woodbridge base at about 5 to 10 degrees off the horizon, still moving erratic and similar lights and beaming down earlier.
There you go.
Also worth mentioning as well, Halt was someone that served in Vietnam as well. He'd seen active combat duty. He knew what he was seeing. He would recognise military craft. What do you make of that tape?
Like this, to me, like for who they are and what they represent, and because of when it was like 1980, to me it would not cross this sort of person's mind to lie about something, or oh, let's all go out and make something up. It just, I can't see that. I mean, they're too, like, can we say they're too far up their own backside, because they're Royal Air Forces. Everything's prim and proper. Everything is what it is. If I see this, I'm telling you, I see this. If I saw that, hear this, smell that, that's it, mate. That's how it comes across. And that's like when you said, and I thought, yeah, I agree. I put like this sort of testimony, like you can't make this up, surely. No way.
No, you can't make this up. And the thing that I think is most clear listening to it is, and it was good, you got it at just the right point to show this, is that you can hear them taking the measurements. They talk about heat and energy, and then as soon as they see it, it changes and it stops being procedural. And the way that Halt talks, this experienced deputy lieutenant who's in control of the whole base at the moment, he doesn't know what he's seeing. That's what is clear to me, that he doesn't have the vocabulary to express what he's seeing. And that's why it's really, really, for me, it's absolutely staggering right near the end when he said, this is unreal.
Yeah.
Because
and one thing for me, like, like we had people going, oh, it's debunked, it's a lighthouse. Well, if you listen carefully, he clearly states, like, yes, it's like, you know, just happens to be around 5 seconds per light when they say, oh, that's a lighthouse. But he clearly states it's red. Well, a lighthouse have a red light. So that debunks that straight away in my eyes.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning the lighthouse because that does come up a lot. What a lot of people don't appreciate is that in 1987 there was a hurricane and 90% of Rendlesham Forest got blown down. I remember driving through there at the time, and it was just absolutely harrowing seeing the forest just decimated. So the trees that are there today and the visibility that's there today is not what it was then. With the trees they had then, they were about 80 foot tall, and they had no branches for about the first 15 to 20 feet. So your visibility was actually quite good if you were low down. And the lighthouse is about 7 miles away. It's not there anymore. It's been demolished now. But the lighthouse is something that obviously would go off every single day. If a trained professional US Air Force person on a nuclear base does not know what a lighthouse looks like, then he has got no right to wear that badge. And I really doubt that a team of 3 patrolmen and then a team of 5 patrolmen, including a deputy commander, are going to mistake the lighthouse for anything other than being a lighthouse. That is absolutely ludicrous. It's quite clearly a misinformation campaign that I would imagine started very early on, probably something along the lines of, oh, some stupid drunk airman thought they saw a UFO, but it was just the lighthouse, turning it into a joke.
Yeah.
Didn't sound like much of a joke to me, though. Sounded pretty serious. Now, what's interesting is he quite clearly mentions in the heat and energy early on. He quite clearly mentions lots of movement. A couple of times he mentions there's a beam that's shining down. That's really significant, particularly for when we get onto later things. But what he doesn't mention is, he doesn't mention the speed that it's traveling. He doesn't, again, mention its size. He mentioned that it's about 200 yards away from them, but he can't identify anything to do with its shape. All he can see is this light that he describes as red. And when he looked through the star scope, through the night vision, it became really, really bright, and it had a dark center to it. So yeah, that's what it looks like today. But where you can see towards the back of the picture in the middle there, where you can see the green, those canopies would have been higher at that particular time. So they'd have been much higher up off the ground.
Yep.
And because these are all obviously new trees that were put in afterwards. That was terrible seeing that, it really was. So he was quite clear about what he saw in terms of trying to describe it, but he just doesn't have the vocabulary to describe what he is seeing. And I don't think he's got anything that he can compare it with. The only thing that he does mention is that it winks like an eye. That's the only sort of point of reference that he has. And this is, I mean, someone's just said there, he's staring at lights whilst in darkness. Yes, he is. That's his job. The whole team spend every day staring at lights in darkness. That is their job, to identify what those lights are. They know what those lights are simply by looking at them, because they see them all the time. As do the locals. I grew up seeing the jet planes fly over. I could recognize the helicopters that would fly over. You get used to seeing them. And yeah, obviously they were working with them all the time. So no, he did not mistake this for anything else, I don't think. So he goes back to base. He's confirmed now that there's a real, and it's I'll call it dynamic because it's moving. It's an external phenomenon, but he doesn't know what it actually is. Now, something that is interesting here is in later testimony, probably about 15 years ago, John Burroughs tried to get a payment for an injury, a heart-related injury received on this particular evening. And whilst he was getting his papers ready, he was helped by a chap called Kit Green, who is a CIA operative, who told him that special access programs, or SAPs, or black projects, were related to this case, but he wouldn't say any more than that. And at the what are they called, tribunal, looking at his payments, they awarded in his favour on the grounds that on that evening he received a high dose of non-ionizing radiation. It didn't say where it was from, but it acknowledged that that happened on that night and that it gave him heart problems. And that is the only significant piece of evidence, I think, that has come out since all the papers were released, because that is confirmation that it wasn't just something that was seen, it was something physical. So that is absolutely massive. Another thing that's kind of linked to that radiation is there, in some of the reports that you see later on, some of them mention that it felt like there was static electricity, or they had a sort of tingling sensation as well when they were in that area. So now we've got physical effects reported, but we haven't got any precise measurements. Halt sent the memo to the Ministry of Defence. The Ministry of Defence concluded, and I quote, that it was of no defence significance. So unknown lights outside nuclear facility, no, it's not a threat to the defence. And in terms of protocol,
how do they know that? How do they know that? That's really irritating. Like that. Yeah, that's like, we know it's something, but we don't want to investigate it because it might come out accidentally and shut your face. Yep,
that's exactly what it means. Nothing to see here, boys. Yeah, you're right. Wow. Now, this is interesting because, like I said, we can trace the protocols and we can trace where there should be evidence. Now, this is where I'm finding a few strange anomalies, like you've just mentioned there. There's one thing that, for the life of me, I cannot understand why it didn't happen, which is, if this is a high alert nuclear security, nuclear ready airbase with high security, surely the first thing they should have done is put the base on lockdown. to prevent any intrusion, because this is an intrusion into airspace. Even if they haven't gone over the base, being next to it is considered a violation of airspace. You would also expect that they would have been tracking things on radar, so there would be some records of things that were happening there. And if it's aircraft, you'd expect them to get some planes up in the sky as well. But there's none of that. None of those things happened. So this, again, it suggests that they didn't see it as a direct threat at that point. And I've often wondered why, and I think it's maybe just based on the behaviours of the past. I don't think that it was the first time these lights had been seen. And I think that on this occasion, because Penniston said he'd seen a craft as well, I think Halt thought, I've had enough of this. I'm going to go out and have a look for myself and put this to bed once and for all. And he's come out and seen all of this stuff and thought, oh shit, I don't know what this is. But I've got to tell the Ministry of Defence because we're in England. And they've come back and they've said, no, nothing to see here. And this is where it's strange in terms of the archives, because if the report has been submitted, now the report he submits doesn't mention anything in there about him not being able to identify it. It's just very mechanical. Like, I saw this light, it moved like this, it did this. You know, nothing really that's hugely a giveaway. But there should have been a follow-up. Someone should have come along and done a debrief to discuss, well, what was this? What was it like? Someone should have investigated, why is there a breach into our airspace? And they didn't. That isn't there. And that should be part of the formal documentation claim. It should also have gone to the base commander, who was called Ted Conrad. No comment at all from him. He should have escalated it to NATO, because obviously we were part of NATO Europe. That didn't happen, as far as we know, because this is where we get to a fork in the road with our documentation. If we take the view that they didn't see this as a threat, it didn't pose any harm, they didn't think it was a physical object, then they can't identify it as a threat because it's not breaching radar, it hasn't gone on their ground, it hasn't attempted to gain access. So it's just lights. So they've looked at it and thought, we don't know what it is, right, that's it, end of. Now, I don't buy that myself. I think it's very suspicious that the evidence ends here. So what I think has happened is this has now gone from Halt, and bear in mind as well, Halt had top secret clearance. So this, I think, has gone above him to restricted level, and that all of the reporting on this event it will all be there, but it will just be in the classified files so that we will never be able to see, and it will be spread over different departments, so you won't ever be able to trace it unless you've got access and to all of the different departments, which of course normally in secret departments you only have access to one area.
Yep.
So that's what I think has happened there. So we saw, let's look at the protocols so that we can trace what happened. So they saw the lights, they sent the patrol, saw a craft, they escalated it. That's the important bit. So they escalated it. That's why Halt comes out, who probably, like I say, had thought, I've had enough of this, I want to sort this out. He's then notified the Ministry of Defence. They've said it's not a threat. As far as we know, that's where the paper trail ends. And it shouldn't, because there's no follow-up, there's no investigation, there's no debriefing, there's no verification of the evidence, getting them to go over it again. There's no consolidation of evidence. There's no one has collated all of these and looked at it together and tried to piece it together and say, well, what was going on here? None of that happens. There was also no air defence response. Some people have alleged that there were radar logs that were kept, but Bentwaters has said all radar records get destroyed automatically after 3 years. So we've got a big documentary gap here, because there's not even any sort of evaluation of the technical specs of what this thing was. You'd at least expect that, because who is going to be doing this? The obvious candidate is Russia. So you'd want to know, well, what have they got that we haven't got? But they don't seem to be treated as if it were Russia. And the things that it was doing, if we look at its sort of specs, this is something that could move through trees in a zigzagging motion at night, that could hover perfectly still, had the ability to shine beams, and could change colour, and also could split into 5 separate pieces. There wasn't anything like that then or now that can do that we know of. So we know that escalation happened, but what we don't know is what the decision-making chain was, because we can't see it. We can't see where it goes next. And I really do think it's a reasonable assumption to say that this has gone into the classified section and that we won't find it, because this is a high-level alert. And what we're seeing here is we're seeing lots of evidence that they investigated it, and then it just suddenly stops. And that is not consistent, I think, with, you know, that sort of event. So I looked through here at what actual evidence we've got, coming from the reports, and also looking at how the language is different in what Halt says, just to give people an idea. In terms of actual evidence that was collected, it mentions on the tape they've got radiation levels. They took tree sap, they took soil samples. They've got light sightings. There were indentations on the ground. There was mention of damage to a tree. And the radiation that they detected was higher than normal. The object, as described by Penniston, was, and backed up by Halt, was that it was a solid triangular craft. Now that's different from what Halt saw. Halt didn't see that. He only sees distant lights that move. So it's important to remember there's 2 different events here. And when Penniston was observing the craft, he was within 50 meters of it. Halt was 200 to 300 meters from it. So he could not see any shape. He could just see the lights. So Penniston is saying, no, this is definitely mechanical. It's definitely solid triangular craft. And the interesting thing there when we get to the evidence is, well, where are the samples? Where are the photographs they took? Where's a complete set of witness statements? Where are all the measurements that they took? Where or what happened to the radar stuff, probably destroyed? And where's the formal investigation? Nowhere to be seen. So we've got multiple witnesses now, and we've got audio. We've got a claim of a solid object that is intruding on the airspace of a nuclear sensitive site. Very, very suspicious and very, very strange. The things that I meant in the audio that are different, sorry, are his language is much more hesitant and uncertain. So he will say things like, this looks like, or maybe, or what is it? This is weird. It's like what he's seeing is constantly changing as he sees it, which is exactly what somebody does when they're trying to understand something under stress.
The brain's processing, isn't it?
Exactly. That's exactly it. Now, some people have said maybe it was the light reflecting from the lighthouse. Maybe there was some mist and it was reflecting ice crystals. I don't think so. Not when you've got 8 people that have seen it now. Now, the interesting thing that I found in the memo is it's much briefer. So this is the report he wrote. So it's very formal, it's very structured, and it says things like, lights were observed, they appeared to be, it was approximately. So it's much more controlled. So it takes out all of that uncertainty that you had when he's speaking. So he doesn't put in there things like, this is unreal, I don't know what it is. It just says, the lights did this, the lights appeared to do this. The Penniston account, though, much more descriptive, much more confident in being mechanical, much more clear idea about, I suppose he's interpreting it better than Halt, because he's seeing it clearer. Now, if I just scroll through my notes here, what we've got at this point is something very, very strange. That is without doubt. we've got something that's been observed, but we can't verify that there's a physical object. So in order for our theory to hold up, to say what happened, we need to be able to account for the following things. We need to be able to explain what was observed. We need to explain lights that can behave dynamically. We need to explain how something can produce a beam, how it can happen over multiple nights. Getting back to what you were mentioning and what really bugs me about this, why was there a lack of threat response? And why was there no follow-up?
I know what it was. It's a festival.
A festival? Well, I've got a theory that will answer all of those things, except for one. There's one thing it doesn't.
Oh, it answers all of it, he says. Oh, all of it but one. Ruined it, man.
Well, it depends on how you view the evidence. Now, I don't think there's any reason to dispute any of that evidence. So we have got statements from 3 of the officers. We know what it says in there. Anyone can go and look it up. They're not going to bullshit, as you say before. They're trained. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, think back to when I spoke about the context earlier. What did I say was right next door to this airbase? Secret weapons laboratory. And this secret weapons laboratory was known to be testing high power radio frequency transmissions, microwave beams. It was projecting radar up onto the ionosphere. It was conducting experiments with electromagnetic energy. And it was also working on things that cause electronic interference. So I thought to myself, well, just think about that date. It's Boxing Day, 3 o'clock in the morning. If you wanted to do an experiment with some serious shit, that's when you'd do it. Because there's not going to be people around. People are not going to be paying attention. And bear in mind as well that I've said they've got a nuclear power station next door that they can tap into to get as much energy as they like. And we do not know what they were up to. We were only guessing based on, reasonable inferences. So if they did, for example, have a massive energy event, I don't know what you would want to call it, a beam or something, some massive energy electromagnetic experiment that involved huge amounts of power or was overloaded to the point that it started to go wrong. High doses of electricity in the air can create lights and moving lights. For example, ball lightning, which is very rare, but there is video footage of it where it literally is a ball of light that will move around. You get plasma effects, like we've all seen those plasma balls, where you put your hand on the top and it looks like the lightning going through your hand, which is you also see around pylons near electricity stations, or sometimes around planes, which is called St. Elmo's fire. So there's all kinds of atmospheric lights that can be created by electromagnetism. Now, because it's really high powered, these lights aren't going to be stable, so they're going to move around. They might even appear to change shape. They might even look like they're splitting up into various different other beams. We know for a fact that the Cobra Mist radar station they had there was deliberately directing beams of energy. So there's no reason to suggest that perhaps those beams became visible because of the high power frequency that was involved. That would be a logical way to look at it. I mentioned earlier, people said about they felt static electricity in the air. Again, that would explain, it comes from electromagnetism. And if this was happening, that would be exactly the reason why the MOD said it's not a threat, because they knew what was happening. Bentwaters wouldn't have to be informed beforehand that this was going to take place. But if afterwards they said to the MOD, oh, we saw some strange lights the other day, they will just say, no, nothing to worry about. And I think we can argue that a real event has taken place. We've got some really high quality evidence and observation. I think the only way it can be classified is unknown. I think it whatever it was, it didn't pose a threat. But the thing I said that doesn't fit is the physical craft, because that's the only bit you can't get to establish. Because I think it fits almost too well with it being a massive electromagnetic test. I think that perhaps what happened is Burroughs, because of the things that he was seeing and the effects he was under, and maybe even psychological effects caused by all the static electricity and all the different waves that were in the air, that he thought he saw a solid triangle that seemed to move. If that is the case, then this explanation would work. And it would say, this is what happened. It would also explain why we don't know about it, because it's top secret. They weren't supposed to see what they saw. And so British government covers that up. That's just one way of looking at it, though.
I'll have to say one thing, like what you're saying there, that makes me think is because when I was reading, I've just found the bit now to make sure I'm not making it up. Like when it comes to lights, like people say, "Oh, red light, white light, whatever," but there's some things that make you think, "Hang on, this is more earthly," because even in this report, maybe you read it as well, that it said like displaying red, blue, and green lights.
Yeah.
Now, that seems to tell me, you know, because like we know aeroplanes, if they're going left or going right, it depends which you can see a green or a red light, and that seems a bit more human, should we say?
It does.
As much as it annoys me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the colours are interesting because the bluish or like kind of like purplish light, that would be something we'd associate with electromagnetism or even high radiation. But these ones, they actually change. That is unusual, and you don't normally see things that change colour. Even if it's an aircraft, it does it at regular pulse. You can spot that it's an aircraft because you'll see usually a yellow light flashing. There'll be one in front of it or something like that. You get used to them if you see them often enough. I don't think there's a chance in hell that they could have misidentified an aircraft. I don't think there's a chance in hell that they would have misidentified the lighthouse. And I think the fact that they even referenced the lighthouse on the tape is proof that they knew exactly where the lighthouse was. So that is just a nonsense theory as far as I'm concerned. Now, I'm not saying that what happened is that they did a massive electromagnetic test. I'm saying that that is a defensible argument that I think stands up quite well to the evidence that's there, and it explains why it's not seen as a threat and why the evidence suddenly stops. But that doesn't mean that that's what actually happened, though, because that's only looking at the official evidence. And of course, there's far more to it than just the official evidence, isn't there? One thing that became clear to me looking into this is that within days of this, obviously, this had got out to locals because the airmen interacted with people in the area. They didn't all live on site. Some of them lived in the local villages. And so word got around it was that either there'd been some sort of an accident or a crash, or some people had out and out said there was a UFO landing. And those were the two stories that I first heard, which probably would have been when I was at school, I guess, probably mid-90s. And that was literally all you knew, because obviously we didn't have the internet to look these things up. All you had was the word of mouth. And when someone says, yeah, UFO landed there, you think, yeah, right, good one. Because that's what we've got to look at with the context. When this event happened, Close Encounters had come out that year, that is true. So that sort of thing was in the air. E.T. came out a couple of years later as well. But I think what's more important is not those sort of things, it's the actual way that UFOs were treated, which was as a joke. No one talked about them. You'd get laughed out the door for mentioning them. I mean, the original ufologists were literally seen as tin foil hat people. And that's, I think, important as well, because I was going to
say,
yeah, go on.
That what you're saying with Close Encounters coming out and everything, that boat boded well with the so-called, have you heard the Travis Walton abduction?
I've heard of that one. Yes.
Yeah, that man, I've analysed him, I've watched him, like, he's talking out of his arse. I don't care what anyone says, but it so happens, like, he watched something, the logging company's in trouble, needs to do something, you know, there's only one way out of, like, not producing enough wood, and that's, you know, some sort of act of God, should we say. And it seemed weird that something was on telly. They just found out about what was the the bloke and the woman, they're in their car, it was their story. What was their name?
The one where it appeared above the beam. I can't remember.
Yes, they're in their car, weren't they? I can't.
I've been too busy stuffing my face with Rendlesham this week.
I know, that's it. I get so much in one, but I'm like, well,
I forget the other ones.
Yeah, what was? Hang on, let me put first recorded.
Well, I think it is really important, though, that, you know, that a deputy commander of a nuclear base isn't going to write in an official report, "I saw a UFO," because that's his career ended. But he didn't lie about what he did see either. That's what's important. And the fact that he recorded it at all shows that this was an important and significant event.
Yep. Oh, can't be. That's it. Barney and Betty Hill. That just happened to.
I knew it was. Betty, because I always think of Frank Spencer when I hear that story.
Yeah. That just happened to come out, and it bodes well with what you're saying. Like, something just happens to come out, and then look, a week later, someone got abducted, and Travis Walton come out of the woods, looked like he hadn't eaten for 5 days. Yeah, because he just stayed in the woods for 5 days, mate. It's not hard. A bit of the narrative. You know what I mean? But yeah, so, like, stories like that. The thing that bugs me about them, unlike this one, because this could go either what way, but something like Travis Walton, that ruins the narrative. It's like, to me, that's like when they say, the Shroud of Turin is real, right? That's an insult to Christianity and to Jesus. That bugs me. That really bugs me. And it's like making a mockery because, this actually reassures it. No, because it's a lie. Travis Walton is a lie. But Barney and Betty Hill, they've even done stuff on the dress. And did you see there's actually a documentary, and they looked inside her dress and they're saying this is what she wore. And the bloke was like, "What's that?" And they're like, "Oh my God, we never saw that." And they wanted to test on it. They didn't actually realise anything else on her dress. So I was like, "Oh my God, how cool is that?" So Barney and Betty, I'd probably say was more than likely real, because I think Barney was black. I mean, coming out and saying you see a UFO and a black man in 1961, that ain't going to go down well. You're a nutter. You're in a nut house. That's the end of his life. So
I agree with that. I just want to address one of the comments though on here, because the Reverend Steve has given a very reasonable explanation for that. It could have been a base security test to test their reaction because of the nuclear warheads that were stored there, which is a very reasonable hypothesis, except for two very important aspects. The commander and the deputy base commander would know about that. There's no way they wouldn't know about that. If you're saying that it was done kind of secretly to test them, then again, there's absolutely no way they would risk that at that time, with that height and tension. There's no way that they would risk something going wrong around a nuclear site. So I considered that one, that it was a test, but I don't think so. And for a long time, I often thought that this was an experimental craft that had crashed and that they'd recovered it, and it looks very similar to the stealth fighter, the F-117 Nighthawk. Looks very triangular, very similar to this statue that they've got in Rendlesham Forest. I thought they had a prototype of that, which they were testing at the time, and that maybe that it had crash landed or something like that. But that isn't, looking at the evidence though, that's not, I don't think that is the case anymore. Now here's where things get interesting though, because that's the primary evidence. But then we get into secondary evidence, because people started talking afterwards. people released books afterwards investigating what had happened. Before we look at that, I thought it was quite interesting to notice someone from Britain who looked into this, who was quite significant. His name is Lord Peter Hill Norton. He was the Admiral of the Fleet, that is, the top man of the Royal Navy. He also happened to be the former Chief of Defence Staff, that is, the top military officer in the UK. He also happened to be former chairman of the NATO Military Committee, and he was a member of the House of Lords. So he's probably the most senior and credible defence figure in modern British history. And starting around 1985, he repeatedly asked the Ministry of Defence, and he asked ministers in Parliament that are on record about what had happened and wanting answers for it. And he famously said, and it's a good one that sums up the whole thing really, he famously said to the MOD, there are only two possibilities. Either a craft of unknown origin landed, or a number of serving military personnel are lying. He never did get any satisfactory answers. To give you an example of the sort of things that they said, he asked about a UFO that was seen from HMS Manchester. He asked to see the reporting logs, and he was told that the relevant page was blown off the side of the boat by a gust of wind.
God, that's convenient.
It's a bit like that bit in the Quran when the goat eats the page, or is it the Hadith? One of them. Same thing. But yes, very convenient.
That was weird because I was sat here all day talking to Jesus. As soon as like you came on with your camera, he disappeared, mate. You know, it's just you couldn't make it up. But it's true, Your Honour.
Yeah. But well, when you're saying that it's true, Your Honour, this is where this whole case depends, really, because I believe 100% Halt, because of his rank, his position, his military experience. I think it was in 2010, he wrote an affidavit as well, where he reiterated what he'd said with slight elaborations. He said that the beam was actually directed at the weapons base where the nukes were, which he doesn't say on the tape, but just because he doesn't say it, that doesn't mean that's what the beam was being aimed at. He just might not want to have recorded that. So, like, yeah, there's
Penniston. Is it him who got what's that? Hypnotized? Was it him who got hypnotized? I swear, there's something.
Yeah, Penniston got hypnotized, and Burroughs.
Yeah, 1994. Oh, did he?
Both of them. Yeah.
Oh no! Oh yeah, I found it now. Yeah, Jeff Penniston. That was 1994. Yeah, but I didn't read any, unless I was skipping through and didn't see it. But it's not actually here.
Hypnosis is because it's kind of, in a way, my almost baseline level, because I'm always half awake and half asleep. I know exactly what it's like being under hypnosis, when you can talk and you can see things in your mind. And I think it would be quite easy to manipulate someone in those circumstances.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think you'll have a look at some of them being hypnotized. No, that's fine. What I think is good is that
it's because, like what you just said there, like it could be manipulated. So sometimes you can end up going down a rabbit hole. You're trying to investigate to the best of your knowledge, but you get blindsided by things that you think, hang on, is a hypnosis really any better than literally what we're going through when we've got notebooks and we've got tape recording? Like, you know, you got to weigh up which way you want to go, and you can end up just blowing your own brain, basically, I think.
Well, there's an interesting point. Why haven't we got any of the notebooks except for the one that Burroughs has got? Penniston has got. Where are the other ones?
Yes.
We've got no idea. How do we know that is the same one that he had on that night? How do we know he didn't buy another one later on? Or how do we know he didn't add to it later on? We don't.
Exactly.
But his story changed slightly afterwards. Now, the first thing I saw of this that I could find, And I recommend people to look this up if they're interested in it. There's a documentary by CNN from 1985 where they do go to the base. You can see what the woods would have looked like. You can see the base. You can see the lighthouse as well. So they even show what that looks like. So you can rule that one out. They speak to locals, and they speak to a couple of people who are silhouetted out, but one of whom is quite clearly Penniston. And I think that Burrows is on there as well. So obviously they were still serving airmen, so they couldn't reveal who they were. But that shows the story came out relatively quickly. In England, the only story in the 80s was it was in the News of the World in 1983, I think it was, under some ridiculous headline like UFO lands in Suffolk or something. So not taken very seriously at all.
One thing that I have to say that's just literally it flashed in my brain, and I was like, do you know what? I didn't even think of that. But if, like what you're saying, oh, it could have been like some sort of weapon thing or whatever, then why didn't they get these gentlemen sign their NDA, say this is what it was, help us just stum, and that'd be the end of it, and then there's none of this UFO crap like it with people like you and I in 2026, because they would have then known it was what you just said, possibly a nuclear this or a test on that, and they knew that, and they're like, right, okay, yeah, we'll keep it quiet as well, and they'd be part of it because, like we say, they're good, professional, honest career men. They'd be like, yep, not a problem, I'll do anything for my country, sign that, that's the end of it. Oh, you saw UFO? No, I never. And they would be a part of the cover-up because it was a weapon.
I'm glad you said the word cover-up, because Penniston, Burrows, Halt, all of them have said the same thing. Halt wasn't involved in this and he wasn't treated like this, but he has said, and Burrows and Penniston have confirmed, that they were given a harsh interrogation debrief. Halt has said on record that those two airmen were given truth serum drugs, probably sodium pentanol, to make them speak, and that they were both, he believes, sorry, before I moved on away from that, he believes that when they were given that truth serum, they were given planted memories, screen memories they're called, you know, to put a screen in front of the actual memory to stop you from accessing it. And these were techniques that had been used by the US in programs like MK Ultra and that sort of thing, which people probably already know about. So it's not unlikely that that happened. Obviously, they were told, don't talk about this to anyone. Halt, on the other hand, was approached to do an interview for a documentary. He went to clear it with the base commander and he was told, yeah, that's fine, talk about whatever you want. Now, I would assume that that's because they knew that Halt would only ever tell the official narrative and he wouldn't speculate on anything and he would just say, I saw lights. Penniston, on the other hand, had changed his story by this point. Penniston had gone from, remember his evidence, he saw it 50 meters away. After the official stuff has all gone and been put into place, his story then becomes that he didn't actually just see it, that he actually observed it come in and land on 3 legs, and that he went up to it and he observed that it had these strange sort of hieroglyphic symbols on it, that it didn't have any doors or any bolts or rivets, and it seemed to be made of like a sort of like a metallic glass type of substance. And he alleges that he touched the craft and then it took off and left. Now, do we take his word for that? This is what the story hinges on, really. Because if you accept that, then we can go down that road. If, however, you reject what he is saying, that he didn't see this actual triangular craft that close up, then that would fit in with my theory that it was just an electromagnetic test, and that he perceived that he saw a metallic craft. So did he or didn't he is the big question. Well,
why would he lie? Or is it a case of like it was there and then you know, like a child, you know, there's no filters and they just say it the way it is. So maybe he had a moment of madness and he sort of accidentally said too much and he was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Because he's talking about his career, I assume. But thing is, though,
Yeah.
to say it's not true and say, right, oh, it must be that then, I think that's a little bit naive. You got, you know, for who he is and, like I said before, what he represents, professional, blah, 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 and the possibility that there might be more to it. Why would you just immediately discount it and say, oh, it must be some sort of weapons test? Because that in itself, I mean, not going to progress as people if we're a bit naive and not willing to actually look into it.
Well,
And maybe some sort of context to come out later where we see it and think, hang on, he's lying, or hang on, that backs that up. I mean, you've got to keep going until you get to that point and then make a decision.
Somebody done that, in fact, fortunately for us, a chap called Gary Heseltine. He was a police officer for about 25 years or so, retired now. He spent his whole life looking into this case and has produced an extended timeline. He believes that there were actually 17 different events, as he calls them, one of which I'd never heard of before, and it seems to be a new one. He referenced a witness who had told him that this happened. So it's second hand. So it's someone told him and then he told him. So there is that. Although it's good enough for the Hadith to be that strong. So if, you know, it's good enough for them, we can go for it. And also, interestingly, in a recent interview, Halt also mentioned this person as well, which makes me believe that there is some truth to it. Now, Heseltine said there were 17 different things. Lights were seen regularly. He said that in between the two events, in between the Penniston event and the event when Halt went out, there was on the day before, an officer called Bonnie Tamplin was driving through the forest onto the base when a bright sort of craft-shaped light appeared in front of her Jeep, and she swerved out the way and crashed. She got out the vehicle and fired her weapon at this thing, and then went back to base completely distressed, covered in dirt, and apparently she was then not seen again on the base. Holt said in the recent interview, he said that he didn't know about that event, but what he did know was that he had heard that she suddenly left the base because she had a nervous breakdown. And the rumor that was going around was that what she had seen had disturbed her so much that it completely broke her mind and she had to be, discharged. And Heseltine managed to track her down, but she didn't want to talk about it, unsurprisingly, as there's a lot of people don't. So I can't say that is definitely true because it's a story from someone else, but Holt obviously knew who she was, knew something had happened to her, so there's something to that story.
Wow. I want to know who she is.
All I know is she was called Bonnie Tamplin.
Was that it? I'm writing that down and all.
Bonnie Tamplin. She was a black officer, so that would have been quite rare to have had a black female at that time, which is perhaps why she stood out to Holt. I don't know, but it's a reasonable conclusion. It's also been mentioned as well that Burroughs and Penniston had some sort of adverse mental health effects as well. Burroughs in particular, it affected him deeply. And some of the things that people have said about his later stories, it could actually be the result of trauma processing. Yes. Because one of the stranger things in the story came out in around the 2000s when Penniston revisited his notebook and found in it a series of zeros and ones that he'd written in there, which he apparently says that after he touched the craft, he received these kind of visions, almost like telepathic or almost like a mind download of zeros and ones, binary code, if you will, which he wrote down, and which people have put through various different programs to decode it. one of which said something about exploration of Earth, and it gives some date for the future. Other people have said it's just a load of bollocks.
That bodes well with. I had to quickly look it up as well. So I remember it all, but I don't actually remember the name, so I've always got to look it up because you sound like an idiot. But I don't know how you say it. It's Mississippi. It was Pascagoula,
Mm-hmm.
UAP.
Yeah.
Apparently 2 men were fishing, got abducted, and it's exactly as you said. The younger one spoke and whatever, enjoyed life. The older gentleman zipped, wouldn't even talk about it, like you say. And that was weird because I think it took him 5 years, maybe 15, some ridiculous amount of time before he even spoke to his wife about it.
Oh, yeah. I quite believe it. It really people up.
But that being an abduction and the way that he's reacted, that's why that's probably still in my brain and remembering it, because to me that's a bit more, like Travis Walton. Oh yeah, let's write a few books and okay, yeah, we do a movie. Yeah, we're cashing in. Was it really that real, mate? Ka-ching. Yeah. This bloke's like, shut up, not talking about it. Didn't even talk to my wife. The other lad didn't go out of his way, but he done sort of like TV appearances and just spoke about it, and that was it. Do you know what I mean? But he didn't really do anything to make money. They just said, oh, if you go to work and earn 60 quid a day, we give you 60 quid so you haven't lost your day's wage. Well, so they didn't try to make money of it.
Is although Halt, Penniston and Burroughs, they have all released books at different times. They have done talks on this, but they've hardly made massive amounts of money out of it. It's probably caused them more headaches than anything else. Except for one person who is involved in this story, a man called Larry Warren. Now he's the one who's told the story about the craft landing and there being alien beings. Some people have said that he wasn't even there. Halt mentioned that Warren was, in inverted commas, honourably discharged and told he could never work for the military ever again. He was later involved in frauds, particularly a couple involving really expensive electric guitars from famous people. I don't think he's really someone that I'm going to take their word for it,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's obviously got it in him that he was seeking fame and or money somehow, any which way. So,
yes.
Done a Travis Walton.
Yeah. A couple of comments have come in that are really interesting and with their theories and in line with what I'm saying. They've mentioned radar tech, stealth tech, use of things to project holograms to convince people there's something there that isn't actually there. All of those things are what I think they were testing at Orford Ness. And so it's possible it could have been any one of those things. It could have been something that, like there were ideas that electromagnetism could be used as like an invisibility cloak. That's been suggested by people. Whether that was possible or not, I don't know. Probably not. But I don't think necessarily that we can say for sure that it was a test. I'm just saying that some of the effects that sort of test could have produced would allow for this, and would also explain why there was no alert level, why there was no threat level increase. But it could just as easily be they just don't know. But I do not think that Larry Warren's story about there being aliens in the forest has got any truth to it whatsoever. Yes, someone has mentioned here the new Blackbird plane called the Dark Star. Yes, there were rumours, I remember this at the time in the 90s, of a plane called Aurora that was apparently the one that followed on from the Blackbird. So, I mean, like I mentioned before, was it experimental aircraft? It's possible, but I don't think so from the description of the lights. It sounds much more, it sounds like electromagnetic effects, but it also does sound as if it's got some sort of controlled intelligent movement as well. And it's not clear enough whether or not that movement was controlled or whether it was random, because if it were random, it would suggest it was more sort of electrically generated. But the idea of the holograms is a really interesting one, because there's long been a conspiracy theory called Project Bluebeam, that a way to unite everybody and get rid of all religions is to have a fake alien invasion, which they use with some sort of constructions and projections to make it look like that's going to happen, which is something that has been doing the rounds again recently, because it's a really great time in ufology, because the disclosures are coming out left, right and centre, and something's going to come out soon. What, I don't know. But yes, the Reverend Steve has mentioned something I was going to mention. Yes, Tesla apparently made a warship disappear, and the Philadelphia experiment is one thing that was the sort of Orford Ness type experiment, which is where they tried to make a ship invisible, but they actually caused it to teleport somewhere else, and people ended up, when it sort of reconfigured itself, people ended up getting caught inside pieces of the boat. So, someone's head would be stuck through a window or something like that. It's widely believed to be bullshit, but we don't know what these different waves do to our brains.
That's mental. Well, I'm just going to run to the little boy's room, mate.
Yes, no problem at all. I'll see if there's any questions or.
Yep.
Or. I mean, I'm no expert on this, by the way. It's just something that I've just been interested in. Drone, Robert Johnson. That's a good one. I looked into, could it be a drone? And the drone technology at that time did exist, but I don't think that they would have had. They didn't have enough battery storage for it to be able to have stayed in the air for long enough, because these lights were recorded as taking place for hours. It wasn't just a few minutes. It literally was about 5 or 6 hours. So I don't think they had at the time the technology for a drone. They certainly didn't have technology that could make aircraft silent, and they certainly didn't have aircraft that could navigate through a forest in the dark. But that doesn't mean that they didn't have things that could have done that we don't know about. And there's all kinds of different technologies that they were messing about with, which I will mention one when Wiz comes back about an interesting thing that I did find. It's not really of any great significance, but it's interesting nevertheless. But it's just such a peculiar case. If anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Obviously, I don't have all the answers. All I can do is present you with the evidence that I have. But I think that the argument against drones would be they were too big at that time. I mean, this object is probably 2 to 3 meters, so about the size of a small car. I mean, a drone at that size would, at that time, would have been much bigger than that. And would I debate Bobby about something along the lines of, is jizya better than our current tax system? I wouldn't debate him on that question, Pat. No, because that's obviously a yes. The answer to that, of course, is no. I mean, who would argue anything in favour of Islam? But I get the idea that you're saying. Have I seen anything strange? Well, like when Wiz gets back, I'll tell you something. Do I think the Yanks built it? Now, this is a really good question. Do I think the Yanks built it? Possibly. I think it's possibly some sort of secret technology that they were testing. But what rules that out for me is that the base commander would know. So I'm not sure that it was that. I think it's probably more likely to be a British invention or a British experiment. But I will address those 2 points. Now Wiz is here because he might be interested in these.
Yeah, I was listening.
I found during my research a declassified document from the CIA that was from the Stargate program, which was the remote viewing program that they were doing. And it clearly says at the top of it Rendlesham Forest, and it then has a long description of things, but you can't really read the handwriting on it, so I don't know what they actually said. And there's a drawing. What it looks like is it looks very similar to a Cold War sort of storage area, and I would imagine that it was Bentwaters in the drawing rather than Rendlesham. Now, why they were looking at that, I've got absolutely no idea. Helen has just mentioned SAP, Special Access Programme. Now, I mentioned before Lord Hill Norton, who had been pressurising the British government. In the States, there was a senator, I can't remember what his name was now, I think it begins with a W, but he was asked to look into it, and he did look into it. And when he was asked what his findings were, he refused to comment on it, and all he said was that it made other sightings make sense. So God knows. But I think it's inconceivable that if there were a secret test going on that were a military one, a US military test, the base command would know about it. The base commander would have to know about it. The deputy base commander might not know, but I would imagine he would probably be debriefed afterwards and told that it was. If it were a British military exercise and they were testing stealth against the Yanks, I think it would be a pretty stupid thing to try that when they're nuclear ready and they're armed to the teeth. So I don't think that they would have risked that. Wasn't Russian. So the only options that we've got really are it's some aircraft that we just don't know what it is. It's some electromagnetic or radar testing from Orford Ness, or it really is a craft carrying space aliens. And of those, the most likely one to me is, and it's an experiment where they had visual phenomena.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that is only making sense of the primary evidence and looking at the protocols and what should have happened and what should be documented. So, like I say, just the weird thing is for me is it just stops. The trail just stops dead. And the only other times it gets mentioned officially is when Hill Norton mentioned it in Parliament, and when the senator looked into it, and most tellingly when Burroughs got his payout for being injured on that night. So whatever it was, you know that it left behind radiation.
But see, that compensation, like admitting guilt. Shit, this experiment went a bit wrong. You weren't supposed to be there.
But we're not going to say what it is, though. We're just going to tip our head slightly towards it. That's all we're going to admit. Someone asked.
Doing a skip. Doing it. Go and skip, mate. Come on, skip.
Yes. Now, I knew they were going to ask me this question, and I thought long and hard about whether or not I should answer it truthfully. So I will answer it truthfully. They asked, have I ever seen anything? And the truth is that I saw something once that didn't meet my expectations for what it should be doing. And I don't know what it was. And it was, a friend of mine lived on a farm. We used to quite often go up there and camp out in the woods, in the fields. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. And
you didn't go Islamic and the goats, did you? Because, no, we're not that sort of channel.
we don't have any of those around here. Not welcome. No. So we were out, and I don't know what we were up to. We were probably getting high as we were teenagers. But we saw in the next field a helicopter was hovering over the field, and we're used to seeing helicopters. We weren't used to seeing them with searchlights shining down on the field, and we, what the hell is that? And we were watching it, just thinking this is a bit weird. And then I don't know who, but one of us noticed, and I just really clearly remember someone saying, "Can you hear it?" Because you couldn't hear it at all. And we just thought at the time, this is odd. why is there a helicopter with a searchlight? And then when I went back and I read through these statements here and I saw silent and hovering, it did make me wonder. I just assumed that it was something weird, and it was probably some sort of stealth helicopter that they've got. But there is absolutely no reason why a helicopter would be shining a searchlight in the middle of a field. And in the middle of a field, when in the next field, if there's a helicopter at the middle of the night, you're going to fucking hear it. You know, they're not quiet, are they?
Did you see like someone on a bike with a basket at the front, and it looked like something was in it, and it was going do 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 do.
The little gang with him flew past the moon. Yes.
You're like, whoa!
That is the. I have to say that is the strangest thing I've ever seen. I would never ever call it. I would never say that it was like that or speculate that it was something like that. It was just. I do not expect to see helicopters hovering perfectly still with a searchlight over a field in the middle of the night. So that's weird.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you hear about like the sort of so-called cattle mutilations and precision.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
You don't hear about that now, do you? That was a very 90s phenomenon. That was.
Yeah,
they would core out their insides as well.
Yeah, it's really weird. But it's strange how it comes in like little sort of moments, like, you know, that the narrative was we're seeing UFOs, like all those drones, and they were going, oh, the UFOs, they're all over America. It went mental. I've done videos going, shut up, like it's just ruining the narrative. We know UFOs. Oh, but it's near this and near that. Doesn't mean it's a UFO either. Then you had cattle mutilation and that. Then we had abductions, and then we got the US Congress going, oh yes, so did you see any non-human biologics? Yes. Can you tell them much more? In a skiff. We'll do a secret compartmentalized information facility, and I'll tell you all you need to know. No, we're here with the public. You know, so did you actually see any craft? Yes. Did you see any aliens? Yes. Can you elaborate on that? No. What's the bloody point then? It, to me, mate, it, like you say, like, you know, it's this is the narrative, that's the narrative, this narrative, all the different, like, this is abductions, and then it's cattle, and then it all seems a bit weird, like they're feeding us an absolute spoonful of bullshit. That's what it feels like. I mean, I like there's aliens, but
yeah, I don't think in this case there are. There might be, but no, I don't think in this case there are. I think that the answers is there in the evidence. It's those descriptions are where we can see what actually happened, and either it is some sort of a craft or it isn't. Then that will depend on what your conclusion is. But either way, I think the standard of identification amongst those men that were watching it is so high that they couldn't put down, we don't know what this is, because it was just. They just couldn't do that. But how could they acknowledge that there was something they don't know what it is that's intruding in our airspace?
Yep, definitely. And for me, like when I was looking, like I said to you a minute ago, it was the colour of the lights, red, green, and whatever. And like that is so like human, isn't it? Like they say, oh, I saw a UFO and it had a green and red light. No, that was probably a plane, mate. Come on, get real. Do you know what I mean?
What shape do they normally appear? Triangles. Because that's just a natural way. It's like a bit like there could be an element of I think it's called pareidolia. You know, like when you see shapes in things that aren't really there, like clouds, on a piece of toast. So
my bank account, pareidolia, mate. I always see money there and it's not.
So same here. I hear that one. But it's, again, going back to where we started, if we look at the context here, there are so many different secret places in concentration as well. I mean, a nuclear power station, spy plane, nuclear airbase, and then a weapons testing area, top secret, but that no one even talks about. I mean, I don't think people would even have heard of it unless there were this case, because the local people didn't know. Like someone my mum knows, she used to work there, and you ask her what she did, and she'll just say, "I was a secretary," because that literally would have been what she did. She would have just done secretary work for that particular department, and she wouldn't have seen anything that she shouldn't have.
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Do you think, in order for, the famous cover-up, do you think the government would rather us think, oh, it's a UFO, it could have been extraterrestrial, it could have been non-human life, that's preferred to what the actual truth is? Like, it could be some super duper secret, I know, invisibility weapon or whatever it might be, but they're like, no, let the public go with the UFO, that covers up what we're doing. So do you think the government would willingly think, yeah, go with the UFO narrative just to hide what this, or the truth?
I think they'd have to go with the UFO narrative at the moment, because I think that if they say that there are UFOs, then obviously it's who's piloting them, where are they from, what do they want? That's an existential threat to humanity, and I think that people would expect that threat to be dealt with, either nuke them out of the sky or find out who they are and if they mean any harm to us. And I don't think that there's that sort of a situation. I mean, I think if I really push things, and I think with the tinfoil hat on, I like the idea of the ancient aliens being here and being seen as gods, and that's why they had different powers, and that's why people thought they were gods, and that they have either gone back to where they came from, or they're somewhere underground or under the sea waiting to come back. And that would also explain why resurrection myths are so popular as well, because it's much older than the story of Jesus, which I believe that is true. Whether they're aliens or not, I don't know any of that stuff. That's just speculation. I like the idea. There's no evidence for it whatsoever. Are there aliens? Well, yes, there are. Look at the stars. There's probability.
There's got to be, because like when you look even at Egypt and that, the size of them and the size of their heads and everything, you're like, why would they draw them like that if they did not look like that? And if they did look like that, how the hell do they look like that? But I watched a documentary the other day, and Tutankhamun, his mum and dad were brother and sister, and something to do with that royal line. Literally, they destroyed themselves. There was nothing they could do, and rather than give it to whoever, whatever, because it's royal, apparently that one of the remaining royals, she got hold of a king elsewhere and said, do you want to come here and take this kingdom as well, because you're already royalty? And it was something like that.
Yeah, he had some sort of deformity as well, and he died.
Oh, he had lots. Tutankhamun had a lot wrong with it. 19, or 19. I believe it was 19. I see. But yeah, he had a lot wrong with him, mate.
Now, there was a story, and I don't know what you think of this, but there was a story about, they had those long kind of beards that they attach to the statues. There is
they weren't trying to look like me.
No, they weren't trying to look like you. No, they weren't, unless they could see into the future. But apparently that's some sort of a deformity that this sort of ancient alien people had, and that's why they had and it got more prominent as the generations went through. So he would have had a huge one because they're trying to get rid, or maybe they weren't trying to breed it out. Maybe it was because the DNA.
King. Yeah, but there's a king like that. Do you remember? There's a portrait of a king, and he's got a really horrible, like pointy king.
It goes like chin. Down here and up here. It's King Philip. That's who it is. King Philip. Habsburg jaw, it's called, when it goes like that.
So that could be sort of like to do with the same bloodline, like the incestuous thing that royal families done.
If it was to do with a bloodline, if there was some sort of ancient alien heritage, then maybe. by the time the breeding with humans had got to Tutankhamun, maybe there just wasn't enough for it to be able to mesh properly, and that's why he was so deformed and died so young. And that DNA is now being, assimilated into human DNA.
But being that your mum and dad are brother and sister, but one thing they did find was their actual DNA is done. It's dusted. There is no one on this planet with their DNA, because they literally sort of incested themselves to death, so to speak. And there's a few bloodlines like that are around where they couldn't have any more kids. They literally could not have them. So that line died, and that was the end of it, apparently. And because they weren't part of the normal people and wouldn't want to have sex with a normal person. So apparently that was the end of their DNA. And they had this weird tree that they showed. And then there was someone else, and it was literally like, brother and sister there had that, and then that had that, and that's it. They couldn't have any more kids. They would, if you did, it'd probably be like what we see with the incest with, that.
Yeah. Well, I do think that in order to understand that, I think we have to change the way that we're thinking about marriage, because the way we view marriage today is that people choose who they want to because of how they feel about them. But then it would have been to do with status and power and securing relationships with different kins and tribes, and that's why we would have said,
royal with royal. That was it. And then I assume as time went on, they worked out, actually, the royalty of England could hook up with the royalty of France, and they suddenly got it into their head that as long as it's still royal, and then we're not going to end up with like a German royal family like the UK.
Yeah, but the other thing though about those times, though, when you had that, an actual inherited aristocracy like that and a monarchy, those people were brought up to rule and to lead. And if you look at how they behaved, for example, in Parliament compared with the people that we have today, people might not like the idea of monarchies and aristocracies, but those people put the beliefs and the interests of the country first because they saw it as a duty. And people today don't see it as a duty. In fact, if anything, they seem to see it as more of an inconvenience.
Yep, and even the Queen was related to Philip twice over. William and Kate they're related in one way or another. I did look into certain things. Not like correct, but it's crazy, isn't it? It's like that. I'm just like, oh my word, happy days, said no one. Maybe that's why they all go bald.
maybe. But we're getting distracted here.
We've gone from aliens to the royal family. Oh my god, the royal family are reptilians. That's what it is.
That's what it is. That's definitely it.
Bringing it back.
I don't really see anything in that narrative of reptilians, unless it's meant metaphorically.
No,
then,
I've got one for you.
Well, I was just going to say the chances.
Did you hear?
Yeah.
Go on. Tell you first.
The chances of an alien race finding Earth is quite ridiculous, really. It'd be like looking for a grain of sand on a beach. So the chances of us being visited by something else is relatively low. But I think,
mate. Already here.
Definitely something that is being covered up in this case. That is 100%. Sorry, I interrupted. You were going to ask me a question.
I think they're already. I forgot now. What was I going to say? It was about something to do with your. What were we talking about a minute ago? It come back to me.
Reptilians.
That was it. Yeah. There's a bloke, right? Take it with a pinch of salt, whatever. But tell me what you think. He actually went somewhere, and he went there every single day for like however long, and he just sat there. And in his mind, he was saying, if you are an extraterrestrial, alien, whatever, or non-human life, I don't know what he was saying, but like, let's say extraterrestrial, it sounds better than alien, doesn't it? But in his mind, he was saying, like, if you're an extraterrestrial and you hear this, please show yourself. And he just kept doing it for days and days and days and days. Then one day, out of nowhere, a bloke came down sat at his table,
Mm.
took his shades off, looked at him, smiled, and got up and left.
Mm.
Did you hear that story? And I was like, do you know what? I might try that. Do you know, I actually thought when I heard it, I thought I'm going to try that.
I have no response to that story. What can you?
I mean, take it, pinch of salt. I mean, but when I heard it, I thought, how like imaginative to come up with that if he did come up with it. But imagine if that they say telepathy is how they communicate or something. But that means our brains somewhere somehow can handle that, because otherwise we wouldn't hear nothing in our brains, would we?
Well, that's why I found it fascinating that the CIA had a Stargate document specifically titled Rendlesham Forest. They obviously thought it was important enough to look at through psychic warfare. And that, again, they could have been using electromagnetism to create distorted thoughts in people or some sort of mind control. I mean, they even had that fairly recently with the Havana incident with sound apparently affecting people. So I would be reluctant to classify it terrestrial, yes, for sure.
That could be a test. Like, you know, so me and you are remote seers. They'll be like, come in here, sit down. It's December the 26th, 3 a.m. Let's see how good you really are. What's going on? What do you see? And they know that they're doing said tests of said weapons or something at Rendlesham.
Yeah.
But they're not told there. And you and I are sat there going, oh, this and that. And that's why there might be documentation, because they wanted to see if remote viewing was real.
Damn it, Helen's just beaten me to it. I was just about to say something then. Yes, I agree with all of that. There is another theory that has been doing the rounds recently I can't remember her name. It's a major who worked at Bentwaters. This is beforehand, and she saw lights there. But she's also going along with the Orford Ness testing theory, but she alleges that what they actually did was create, as Helen has quite rightly put on here, kind of like portal, and what came through it, what these lights were, was actually some sort of interdimensional being that we can't actually, that's there all the time, but we can't actually see, and this allowed us to see it. And that, whenever I hear stories like that, it always reminds me of the one thing that Islam gets right, which is jinn. And I do think that there is, it's perfectly possible that there is a dimension that we cannot see that's in front of us, because of, you know, there are sounds we can't hear, there's light that we can't see. So it's, you know, there's quite likely that there could be something right in front of us that we couldn't see, but could, you know, be possible. And that, I think that's one of the most recent theories, is that they were testing something like that, which sounds a bit like what they do at CERN as well, that kind of thing. But God knows, I really do think anything is on the table at Orford Ness.
Don't you think, though, this is like, it's how cynical my brain goes, right? If you're an alien, right, you just somehow travelled, I don't know, a ridiculous amount of light years somehow without dying. You've obviously done it rather, I don't know. And you're like, look at this little blue marble. I don't know what this planet is. Obviously, it's Earth, mate. You know, I'll give it away. And it's like, oh, look, there might be life on that. Let's investigate, because of all the lights and everything. They're like, oh my God, we have found a new species. Do you really think after all that they're going to be that stupid to have massive bloody great lights and they're moving, going, look at us, can you see us? I mean, how stealth is that for watching a different species? Like,
yeah,
it just, to me, that sounds ludicrous. Like, UFO, look at all these lights. Why have you got your lights on if you're a bloody UFO, man?
You're not just going to turn up to say hello, are you? I'm here. You'd do something. You'd land. You'd make contact. You'd fire weapons to show that you're, you know, more powerful. You do something. Yeah.
How about we get a light show and you catch it on a potato and you load it up to TikTok?
Well, that was, you anticipated me. I was about to say, in this day and age where everyone has got an HD smartphone Why is it that we still don't have definitive video evidence? I know there's loads of stuff out there, but we haven't got anything definitive, apart from the only thing I would give credit to is the military ones that have been released, you know, the Tic Tac and that kind of thing, which the Tic Tac does kind of remind me of the Rendlesham lights as well. It could be something like that.
But I got a feeling like they're probably so deep in our ocean, they're actually already here.
Well, that's why I mentioned ocean, because if you were going to go somewhere, that's where you'd go, because we haven't mapped it all. And the stuff down there,
pressure.
Quite wicked. Yeah, they might actually. Yep. Yeah, it could be something like that. And it's something that has been in myths for centuries, this idea of resurrection, so it could well be. I mean,
did you see the interview with the bloke with the white aliens? And he actually used to work. He was in like a base bit somewhere, and they come out, and he's not allowed to liaise with them in any shape or form. But he ended up doing so. But the female actually turned around and said, like, "This is my son. We love our children more than you do." And he's like, "Don't know what that means." And then he found out he got the job because the bloke who had the job before him done something, and they killed him because obviously it was something against one of the children. And he actually had them come into his room, and there was a can of Coke, and he was worried that the kid might do something or hit something in it a ball, and they would kill him. And he said he actually had to move the can of Coke because he was that worried. But he said they're really like thin. They go into whatever base, but they come out, and he said eventually they actually trusted him. But they literally said, "You do anything to our kids, like you could literally walk past and just bump him, and they would kill you." And he like the thing that I remember is saying, like, "We love our kids more than you do," because that hits home. Because what humans do, I mean, I'm gutted. I'm human. I'm happy, but I'm gutted. Yeah. What we're like and what we do to each other, even in 2026, I think it's just ridiculously stupid. So that hit home. And there's another bloke, he's actually got a couple of fingers missing, and he had a mark on his belly where he got shot by a laser.
Bloody hell.
And then all of a sudden they shut him up. Have you seen that interview as well? He's talking to press about it.
I haven't, but lasers are something that they were testing at Orford as well.
Yeah, he said he went down too far, one floor too far. As it opened, because they're not supposed to be there, they literally started shooting at him. And they were shooting back. He said one got killed, he got blasted in the belly and lost his fingers. Let's see if I can find a picture of him.
Yeah, they're definitely even that goes on. Like they've got sound weapons as well, for example, where you can destroy ships or submarines using sound waves. It's really incredible and terrifying.
Can't think what the bloke's name was. It's really annoying.
Yes, the old green man is. They did rumor. It was rumored to have nuclear weapons at the time. It did have nuclear weapons at the time, but they didn't have B-2s there. Though they're way too big. They didn't have bombers. They had A-10 tank busters, and they had F-111 fighter jets. The B-52s were for the huge bombs. The A-10s used tactical, smaller nukes. So the B-2 is an example of secret tech.
Always can't find something. I always think, "Oh, cover up." I can't think of his name.
Ah, yes, that reminds me. Yes, cover up. We talked about cover up earlier. Did you notice anywhere the involvement of the police in any of those records we went through?
Any record of police?
Yeah.
No.
Now, we've got to remember here that Rendlesham Forest is British. Bentwaters is American. technically, whilst they're there. So they're out armed in an English wood looking for some craft. I would have thought that not only would the Ministry of Defence need to know, that the local police should need to know as well, to keep people away from the area, if nothing else. And guess what? Some of the later stories actually have incidents of local people being told to stay away by police.
But surely, like, that bloke who sued Burrows and then got money for his heart, then surely no one would have been allowed anywhere near the place. Maybe they knew beforehand. But then they would have come out and said, "Oh, UFO, what you on about? We were told blah, blah, blah."
But it does make you wonder, why, if they were doing some secret testing there, why is it still secret now? I mean, why can't they declassify it? Or is it still such a secret that they can't do it because either it was unethical maybe, or it didn't work, or perhaps they're worried about other people having that technology, or maybe it was too dangerous? I mean, it's all just loads of ifs and maybes, and it still fits better than saying this is an unknown craft of unknown origin.
Yep, that's true.
But what I couldn't find out, which the Reverend Steve has just mentioned, is about the frequencies and subsonic frequencies shaking and explosions and things like that. There definitely were local stories about those things happening because they were testing bombs. But as for the actual local stories, I don't know anyone who lives in the area personally, apart from what I've told you about when my mum lived there. So I'm sure there would have been stories going around. And like I mentioned before, I'd heard that something had happened that was allegedly a crash or a landing.
Oh, I can't find the place. So annoying. That's weird, isn't it? I'm not making it up. That's really annoys me when But yeah, he was in a press interview and he shows like his fingers and he's like, "Oh, they shot me. I was in the lift."
I wouldn't be surprised. You can't rule anything out with these people and what they're willing to test. And we also have to remember as well that what we actually see is years behind what they've actually got on the testing. I mean, I mentioned the Nighthawk, the stealth fighter, and that was being tested in 1980. But nobody knew about it until I think it was 89 or 90 when that was first known about. No, it was 90 because they used it in the Gulf War. That was its big announcement. And that really does look like a UFO. And if you saw one of those, at that time, you definitely would have thought this looks more like a spacecraft than it does a plane.
That'd be quite cool. That's what you want to see. I mean, do you think there's actually something really in this whole narrative, or do you think it's been spun that much? It's to the point where people just.
I think something definitely happened. That's for sure. Quite what, I don't know, but what you're saying is exactly true. That's how narratives work. It starts with the truth. Something gets added to it, which could be true. It could be extra information gets added to the story that actually helps. But there also could be information introduced that distracts you away from the story by exaggerating it or taking you away from what was happening. And that's why it's much harder to trust the later narratives. But I do trust Charles Halt and his affidavit, and I believe that if he says he saw it, I believe that he saw it. And I base that on his rank, his experience and his expertise. And if he doesn't know what it was, then it must have gone elsewhere. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Well, what do you think about Bob Lazar in Area 51? Do you think those narratives are real?
Well, yes,
swipes.
There's definitely something real to them, yeah. Well, Orford Ness is in some ways is the Area 51 of England, except they're not testing aircraft, they're testing weapons. So absolutely Area 51 exists. That was something I remember first hearing about in the 90s as well, through, of all people, Megadeth, and their song Hangar 18, all about Area 51. So it's a bit of good education for me. Yeah, that's somewhere where it's middle of the desert, huge runway that I think is about 6 miles long, or no, 12 miles long. And that is where they test their aircraft and their nuclear weapons. As for Bob Lazar, well, he mentioned reverse engineering, and there was some substance that he mentioned that he had access to that wasn't known at that time, but since then has actually been proven to be true.
Yeah, element 151 or something like that.
Something like that.
Because he was in S1, wasn't he? In Area 51, but it was S1 or S2 was where he works. And again, he got because the bloke who was working on it beforehand got zapped and died from whatever it was, I believe.
But I think the way that he described it was the compartmentalization sounds like he was there, and it's exactly the sort of way that they would work. A black project like that, you'd only know the one bit you're working on. And if he
element
was
115, sorry,
you weren't far off. So yeah, that's all that he would. If he was reverse engineering something, he'd only know that one aspect of it. Now, is he reverse engineering something? Well, probably. I mean, that's what they do. If you capture your enemy's tech, then you try and rip off what they've got, or laugh at what they've got and how shit it is, like often was the case with Soviet tech.
Yep. And did he not say he actually got in one of the craft and like it was so small because they are so small when he had to sort of go through on his hands and knees or lay down, or I'm sure he said something like that.
I think there's probably something in his story that's true, but how much of it I don't know. And I think he's more credible than Larry Warren for sure. But
I think so. If it's half truth with a lot of bullshit around it, it can still sound true, can't it? Because of that truth element. So
exactly. And it is interesting the way that you mention narratives, because it does. It just kept reminding me, like I mentioned before, about how the Islamic way of thinking works when it comes to evidence, in that you will take someone's belief as fact, whereas we in the West look for evidence. And so under the Islamic tradition, they would take it absolutely that he saw a craft because he's a noble, respectable person. And that's how you get, the hadith, just through chain of command. Someone who's supposedly reputable said, oh, Muhammad said this. Oh, it must be true then. So we'll write it down, even though it was hundreds of years ago. Same kind of thing. A smaller level is what was happening in here.
Yep.
Yes, Slim is right. I forgot that. Yes, Bob Lazar did run a brothel. I remember reading that. So yeah,
when he got fucked.
that does kind of, ruin his credibility a bit.
It does. What about Mr. Skiff himself? Like I referred to it earlier, and I kept saying the Skiff. Well, we're doing the Skiff, but the bloke I was taking the mick out of was that David Grush, if you remember him.
Yeah.
What an absolute prat! He bugs the living crap out of me. He does. I saw an alien. Yeah, well, can you tell us about it in a Skiff?
No. In the Skiff,
conference to get it all out.
He is an idiot. At the same time, though, at least he's got the subject out there into the public domain, and people are talking about it, and things are being released that weren't.
But there's no evidence. He's not said anything new. Oh, is there alien aircraft? Yes, we know that. Is there aliens? Yes. Well, most people sort of assume that there is already. Anything else? No. Do you want to tell us something that's going to be earth-shatteringly superb in a Skiff? What? And I was a bit annoyed. Corbell, in it, Jeremy Corbell. He sort of arranged it all. And that Louis Elizondo, I'm like, guys, do you think we're stupid? You literally told us nothing. You sat there for a whole hour or two telling us all about this, that, and everything else, but nothing. I'd done a video about it. I was fuming. Absolutely.
They're
fuming.
more likely to be disinformation than misinformation, I would guess. It is good though to see that they. I think she's a senator. I'm sure she is something like that. Anyway, Anna Paulina Luna. She's the politician who's behind getting all of these things coming out. So I think that that's really good that they're doing that. But why are they doing it? Is it preparing us for something?
Or well, either the false alien attack, or it's because like, oh, hang on, Epstein files are coming out. Oh no, well it is right. We want to tell you about some UFO information. Oh, such and such, you know. Keir Starmer's apparently likes little boys. Oh, come here, conference. We found little green men. Do you know what I mean? Like a side, like, it fits because it makes you look one way when they're doing, one hand does this and one hand does that, maybe.
Yeah, it does. And like I say, there's long been rumours of this idea called Project Bluebeam, with this fake alien invasion, and maybe this disclosure is moving towards that. I don't know, but I mean, when I first heard that story, I thought that sounds like absolute bollocks. But actually, when I thought about it and thought about what technology we've got, yeah, you could do that. Because let's be honest about it, even though we've got this wonderful technology, the internet in front of us, half the things you watch, you've got no idea whether or not it's even real. You watch a video on YouTube and you realise after 5 seconds it's another bloody AI voice. It's more AI content. There's a war currently going on in Iran, apparently. But we have no idea whether there actually is or not. We can't actually see it. We're told that this is happening there. We see these images that come from there, but we have to trust. And I don't think people trust in the sources they used to trust in anymore.
Yeah, probably right. I can't find that bloke for love. I'm gutted.
I mean, what is strange? They've decided to go to the moon again. That is odd.
Yeah, I don't understand, because I swear, one of the astronauts actually turned around and said like they're watching us, and because they had 2 videos, didn't they? One for the press and one that was sort of the back end or something. And he gets told like, yeah, go on that radio or whatever. And he turns around and is like, they're watching us. Like, what? And that's all I know about it. Do you know how bugging that is? That sort of crap can keep you up all night because you've got nothing to work with.
No. I mean, I've always been conflicted about whether they've actually been to the moon. No, I can't never.
Too. Funny that. I'd like to think we have, but
yeah,
who knows?
I'd like.
I mean, but they did. 400,000 people, they said, would have to be a part of that to bullshit it. But I was a bit like, well,
that's
not really, because all the people you think involved, they're not actually involved because they're bullshitting it. And didn't that famous director turn around and said like NASA paid him to actually film it?
Yeah, it's long rumored to be Stanley Kubrick.
That's it.
And no, they had the tech to do it. I mean, to get them to do the moonwalks, I think that all they did is just speeded the film up. No, sorry, slowed the film down slightly, and that's all they did. How do we know that was taken on the moon? We've got no idea what the moon looks like, so it could be anything. I'd like to think that they have, but a part of me thinks, did they really have the tech that could have got them there at that time? I mean, they had some amazing tech, like the bird, but could they really get there? I mean, the fact that they're struggling to get there now, it would have been a massive propaganda win for them, especially after they lost They were involved in Vietnam as well at the time. It's a great way to say, look how great we are. And also, why haven't they been back for 50 years? Is it that shit there that it's not worth bothering with for 50 years?
I don't get that. Like, you know, they're saying, oh, there's this there, there's that there. We can mine this and mine that. But here we go. Even the moon, they're going to try and make profit out of. And if we can make much money, why didn't you do it years ago? You can't say it was too expensive and not whatever, because even today it'd cost a shitload more, wouldn't it? Yeah. Ridiculous amount.
It would. I mean,
we got all this technology, but we can't get there.
Yeah. I mean, I know not everyone feels like it, but I do like space exploration. I do think it's important. And I love it when you get to see the space rockets take off. It's great. And when you see the space project sending back pictures from Jupiter and things like that, it's amazing. So I would love it if they there.
Yeah, literally, I would love to be on something. Even like when you watch Star Trek or something, their ship, like the exploration and everywhere they go and who they see and what they do. I'm like, I could live like that. That would be awesome to see that sort of stuff. Like, and there is possibly other intelligent life. Because this is the weird, like my brain is on another level. But us as humans, right? We are what we call intelligent mammals. So would it be ridiculous to think like elsewhere in the planet in the universe that we are intelligent as mammals, but somewhere it could be like they're insects, they're intelligent. You go somewhere else and you got, I don't know, reptilians. They're the intelligent species and they progressed like what we did. Or did we actually come from monkeys, or was there a bit of science by something somewhere to move it up? Because the way that we evolved was just such a short space of time. Who knows? I don't know.
There is another theory that we haven't mentioned yet, actually. I'm sure you're aware they are being visited, but it's not extraterrestrials, it's humans from the future. And that's why their appearance is different, and they're coming back to try and repair. Usually it's related to nuclear events. That I couldn't tell you whether that's true or not. A great interesting one.
What if, right? Like, you know, when we're like, oh, food and be vegan, be this, be that. Oh, we've got protein shakes, we drink it. What if we've done something with food to the point where our mouths we don't need teeth. So the mouth's got smaller. All we do is drink our nutrition. And then obviously, oh no, you can't actually have sex because of sexual diseases. So we do it all in the lab now. Okay, your genitals disappear. And they've just evolved so far that they literally have no genitals. They can no longer actually procreate, or whatever you want to call it. They can't do anything with their mouths. So like they're so small. So talking is now through the brain, and they want to come back and stop us to evolve that far because it's just going to evolve us into extinction. Maybe
that could be, that's just as possible. Yeah. Who knows?
My brain's bad.
Evolution would work. And yeah, maybe there is a move towards that. I mean, is that what trans is all about? Getting people to stop having sex, stop breeding.
Yeah.
That's why they keep promoting gays all the time, to stop people breeding.
Yeah.
And abortions. It's a much easier way than just killing people. Let them think it's a choice.
I think if gays have a baby, it'd be little shits, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, they can't, so that's all right. Yeah, it's just this subject though. Just opens up so many different things, doesn't it? There's so many areas you could go down with it.
I think that's interesting because we don't have the answers, and you and I could sit here for the next 6 hours and speculate all we want. I think that is viable. Oh, that is viable. Oh, that is viable. And it's just like, whoa, it could blow your mind. But it'd be nice to know, like, you know, at some point, even when we die or something, Jesus will turn around to us and go, now you're here. Do you remember when you spoke to Jake on YouTube? You said that's right. And then he'll tell you, and we'll be like, we were right. But no one knew it.
Well, you know, you mentioned Jesus there, but that's an interesting one. When I said about narratives before and how they develop. I mean, we know that there are records that Jesus existed from Josephus and Tacitus, but they weren't written when Jesus was alive. They were written about 30 or 40 years afterwards. And it literally just mentions that someone called Christus was executed. So he was important enough to be written down and remembered. That we can definitely say. But it's... Yeah. No, the way that narratives develop, it would make more sense that it, you know, if over time it was this normal preacher, then it's, oh yeah, he came back from the dead, him. Oh, well, if he came back from the dead, maybe he had other powers and could do miracles. And so that gets embedded into the story to make him more human than the normal human. That doesn't mean that the teachers are all wrong and there's nothing to them, but that's how stories develop over time.
But what if, right? I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying, like, for the argument's sake, but like some of the miracles are walking on water or whatever, or turn water into wine. You know, everyone's going to love a bloke if they turn water into wine. Drinks for free, mate. You know what I mean? But what if, like, because you say, oh, you know, aliens could have visited us in the past, and it could just be over 2,000 years ago, there was someone there who still had a certain way of becoming weightless and could walk on water. And then, like, it could be possibly that there's some sort of alien DNA going on. And then the stories go, or at some point, they realized that they could actually try and read and write, because when Jesus was alive, they weren't really that good at it. But there is text of that period, so...
Well, I mean, there is something to that theory. There is the story of the Moravian dynasty and how the bloodline of Jesus was smuggled out from there through Mary Magdalene and kept hidden in France, which is what all the Da Vinci Code stuff is, which they nicked from a book called Holy Blood, Holy Grail. So, yeah, that is a theory that's out there. It doesn't go as far as to say it's alien, but the principle of keeping the bloodline because it's got something extraordinary in it is the same.
Yeah, because Jesus is the Son of God. I'm not being funny. If you saw God, you would look at him as an extraterrestrial, would you not? Because he's not from here, not from an earthly figure. He's more than.
Yeah.
So we see him as like an alien being. Surely we would.
Well, it's interesting if you've seen J.D. Vance talk about these UFOs and things like that recently, because he always uses the term demons. He believes that they are demons and they are some sort of interdimensional creatures, which again is something we mentioned earlier on. So this idea of demons and jinn is something again that we don't know whether these things exist or not. They could well exist. I mean, some people have even said Rendlesham Forest could be like Skinwalker Ranch, somewhere that has natural properties that create these bizarre effects like lights or gases that perhaps drug people, or, well, that's what happened in Greece anyway at the Oracle, but, you know, that kind of thing. Things that are environmental that look supernatural.
Do you believe Skinwalker Ranch and Skinwalkers and that narrative? And, you know, they filmed like a weird orb go under the helicopter. And
I really like the story and the idea of it, but come on, it's a reality TV show. I mean, that says it all.
With a security guard called Dragon.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're not going to set up all those cameras and nothing is going to happen. But there may well have been some truth in some of it at some point. But at some point, they're just going to make it making money. But like I said,
but that's with every single narrative, every single thing you could ever think of. There's going to be someone who thinks, I can spin this to make money. I can embellish on it, make money. And that's going to just hide real facts and truths from people like you or I, because like it's been blown up out of proportion.
And that's what I think has happened with Larry Warren and getting involved in this story. I think that he brought that element in, and that then Penniston's account of this craft then is discredited by what Warren has said later on. That's how I would interpret it. I'm just not sure whether Penniston actually saw a craft, but based on record, I've got to logically accept that he saw something that looked like a craft.
Yeah, like when I disappeared for 30 seconds, they said drone. That's what I was going to say to you. Like, what even like if it's up in the air for that long or whatever, like you said, like batteries or whatever. But even back then, would they not be able to say do something somehow and have it be able to run on nuclear energy? And hence why Matey's heart went funny, because it could have been that sort of invention. Or
I've wondered about. It could be something nuclear powered.
Atomic.
And it seems to be that whatever it is like some sort of a probe that's scanning the area, looking for things. It's not there to cause harm, but is it a drone? I don't think they had the tech to build something that would be that size. And as for the power, if they had something that's like a miniature nuclear fusion, it's possible. But I think would we maybe by now have seen that tech become more mainstream, or maybe it was just too dangerous, so they decided not to.
And this is what 11 years after we've been to the moon.
Yeah.
And go to the moon.
About the tech that we did actually have, though, rather than, yes, we went to the moon, but if you take, for example, it moving through the forest in the dark, it would have had to have had some sort of infrared, at least, sensing system, some sort of computer navigation. We just didn't have that tech that could do it precisely at that time. But we have got tech today, for example, where it's almost like thought control. Like you could use weapon systems, for example, just by it uses the electric signals in your brain to register that you thought of it to cause this action, and it could, for example, fire a weapon. That is something that is possible today. Now, perhaps they were working on that back then. We just don't know what they did and didn't have at Orford Ness. And it might have been like some kind of thing out of Stranger Things, that big laboratory they have there. It could be something like that. But I think a drone at that time is, I think, unlikely.
Yeah.
But as Olga's just said, maybe the truth has been bent because people were never meant to find out about it. And I think that's the most likely thing. But I think they brought in an element of misinformation to discredit the story. But then I think that they thought it's just going to sound so ridiculous if they say it anyway, so we'll just let them get on with it. No one will believe them. And the real story has gone through a completely different channel that we can't access. It's all classified. And if you follow that line of logic, that is a far more convincing story than it's an unknown craft that just turned up. But afraid there can't be any clearer than that. And I'm sure that there'll be things that come up over the years.
I can't see it traveling all that way, coming from all this distance. We're aliens, right? We're just going to happen to we're going to land in Rendlesham Forest because there's people out there see us. That sounds stupid, doesn't it? Like, you know, they'd be sneaky.
Yeah. And why were the lights only seen in that particular area? Why weren't they travelling around? It looks like they were there for a particular reason. Or if they weren't there for a reason, they are being hosted in that area. So they didn't actually travel to.
And what do those weird green, red, blue colours mean? I mean, there's more to that. That means something. Like those lights are that colour for a reason.
And why did they notice, as we heard on the tape, that there was heat in the area and increased radiation? I mean, that isn't just, I mean, that, you know, maybe you're right. Maybe it was some sort of nuclear powered device.
What else would cause it, though? Oh, well, we wouldn't know, I suppose.
I mean, if this craft is real, how it is powered is something that is completely beyond what we know, because it doesn't seem to have any propulsion.
When was Bob Lazar working, doing whatever in Area 51? What about us and if it was Element 115 or something?
So I think he would have been around mid-80s, I think, mid to late 80s.
So that would... Let's have a look, Bob.
I could be wrong there.
Area 51.
I mean, Area 51 is another one. It was rumoured for years that it was there, and people said, no, that's bollocks. But it exists, and you cannot get near it. And people try all the time, but they soon get sent packing.
Oh, it says about it. Oh, E115 was first synthesized in 2003 and later named Moscovium.
I'm inclined to agree about Bob Lazar, that he probably heard someone talking in his brothel and then he went along with their story and made it his own.
Yep.
I mean,
it's Dennis. Why would you work under a pseudonym called Dennis? No one else has ever. It was S.
I would really like to have a conversation with Charles Halt. I really would, because I think it would be. I think if you could talk to him off the record, I think he might find out a few more little details that he can't publicly say, and I believe in him.
Yeah, I don't think he got any reason to lie, and a man of his stature would not lie. I can't see it.
He wouldn't. Well, how are we going to conclude this investigation then? What is the finding? How can we put it in the most fair way? I think that we can definitely say something happened over a series of a few nights that multiple people saw. It's, I think, ambiguous whether or not it was a solid object, but it possibly was. And whatever follow-up took place because of this intrusion into the airspace and to the base went into classified channels. And therefore, we won't know what happened. But something happened, but we'll never find out what, because it's top secret.
Yep.
But
And
yes, it wasn't a lighthouse.
If you're an extraterrestrial, it wasn't the lighthouse, yeah.
It really wasn't the lighthouse, no.
Yeah, why, right? At what point, right? If you're smart enough as an alien to make a craft that can do what it can do, I mean, you got some superb, like, beyond human intelligence, and you're telling me that they decided to take their UFO to Rendlesham Forest not once, but they thought, let's do it the next night. Let's hang around for 5 hours.
We'll just hang about. We won't do anything. We'll just hang about, do a bit of a dance for them.
Yeah. I saw an aeroplane. It had a green and a red light. We got green and red. We got, yeah. Flash them. Make sure we get seen as well. Do you know what I mean? We're really, really intelligent. We are.
Or
Yeah,
even if you
coming back tomorrow night.
You wouldn't even do it if you were Russia, because that would be risking nuclear war if they'd done it. So we know it wasn't them. And no one else would have had the tech. Because the thing with the Russians is, like I mentioned before, they had a lot of men, they had a lot of equipment, but they didn't have the quality that the Americans had. So America might have one shit hot tank. Russia will have 5 shit tanks. Which is better? And that's kind of how they operated. The Russian stuff was all made sort of on the cheap with what they had and banged together with nuts and bolts and leftovers. And I mean, they made the MiG-25 Foxbat to catch the Blackbird, and it could get up to the right speeds. The trouble was, though, it took so much out of it that it would destroy the engines. But what they did that was quite clever. Well, they were clever. What they often used to do is they would fly across airspace where they knew they'd get tracked, and they would do it at massive speed so that the West thought they had something extraordinary, when really what they had was basically just a steel rocket that was knocked together that could barely turn, but it could go really fast, and it could shoot missiles that might hit the Blackbird. That's what their technology was like. It was a much simpler time as well, having you knew who the enemy was back then.
Yep.
We don't have that now. Nowadays, everyone is a potential enemy.
That's true.
So in some ways, it was an easier time.
It was. Well, that's mental. That was actually, I can't believe it, 2 hours and 46 minutes we've been going. That is unbelievable.
Can't believe it. That's a long talk. No wonder I've got such a mouth. And, thank you for giving me the opportunity. It's been really interesting to do it. So thank you for that, and for giving me the time to talk to people, because it's not something that I've talked about before. It's just something I've just had an interest in the background. You know what it's like. You pick it up now and again, look into it and think, what happened? And I hope that anyone listening either learned something new or thought about the case in a different way, or just maybe enjoyed hearing it being said again and having some new ideas on it. So I hope that was clear for everyone. And thank you for watching.
I mean, I'm very much a person that, when they say, oh, it's a UFO, straight away, I think the opposite now. I'm like, no, it's not. What evidence is there to prove that it is?
Yes.
Rather than going, oh, prove that it isn't. I've switched it because I think it just makes it a bit more sort of tangible that, if it works out to be.
Yeah, it does. And I think that if you take that approach to the evidence and the way that we looked at it, then looking at it in that way, it completely rules out the UFO, because there's nothing in there that says that that's what it was. And that's why it's intriguing, because it's ambiguous. We can't tell whether something actually was physically present or not, but we know that something happened. And let's not forget, we know that it has been acknowledged by the American institutions that whatever happened had a physical effect that caused a lifelong heart problem for Burroughs.
Yep.
So we know that at least they were exposed to radiation, but they shouldn't have been. And
but there is nothing definitive to say, yes, it is a UFO. There isn't.
No, there isn't. And that's why I think, if we go right back to where we started, and I said I've always wondered why they never raised the threat level, I think that's the reason why, because they couldn't identify what the threat actually was to give it a threat level.
Yeah.
Because if it had been an Apache helicopter, for example, they'd know what that was straight away, and they'd know how to deal with it, and they would know that this is an incursion into our airspace. Let's get rid of it. Or if a plane had suddenly shot across at 2,000 miles an hour, they'd have tracked it on radar. Planes would have gone up. They'd have got it. I genuinely think they don't know what it was, and that anyone who does know what it is, or investigated it further, is beyond our level, and it's above top secret level, because Charles Halt doesn't know either. Although I suppose top secret doesn't mean you've got access to everything that's top secret. It means you just have access to top secret materials. But
yep, that's right. So there we go, guys.
Hope people have got something from it, and I'm having a day off tomorrow. I don't know about you. I'm knackered now.
I'm going to do a bonus call in for anyone who wants to call in, but I'm going to have my news stories. But if anyone wants to call in and say anything for 10, 20 minutes, they can do. But that's all it'll be tomorrow. But yes, because I've got a door out, I need to give it another light sand and another coat of paint as well. So happy days.
That's the life. I asked my brother-in-law about your incident, because he's an inspector, just to finish things off. And he put it in a way that made me see it differently. In that, when it happens, what you want to happen is you want the police to come round, you want them to take a statement, you want them to go out and catch the bad guys. And he explained to me, he said, look, when I'm on duty, I've got 8 officers across 3 different districts. If any incident happens, 2 of them are out straight away. So and I said to him, so are you saying that this is just not worth attending to? And he went, it's not just that, it's just you have to prioritise where your officers go. And unfortunately, he said, throwing paint at someone's door or even burglary is very unlikely to get a visit. And he's not happy about that, by the way. That was just him.
No. But yeah, it sums up how bad and how undermanned and underfinanced the police are. It's a shame. But that's what it is.
Well, at least you haven't had a repeat of it.
No. Otherwise, I will start putting investigations on, and I'll probably end up doing time.
I don't blame you. Well, of course, in things like that, it's best to put the word out, and other people do your work for you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I'll put the word out. People point me in the right direction. I'm happy. I'm more than happy to do it myself, mate. I'll protect my family. I don't shit, but
and I would.
It is what it is.
I'd really like to talk to Helen about her experiences at some point as well, because it sounds really, really interesting. But I and being reluctant to talk on camera, and I understand it's a bit embarrassing and all that kind of stuff too. So, but I genuinely would like to know what you have experienced, because I am skeptical of those sorts of things, and I would just like to hear an account from someone who has experienced it and try and understand it.
Definitely, yeah. Was it like what did I say, Helen? Yeah, to email me. My email address is on the channel page. Just click it. I think you got to click to say you're not a robot. It reveals the email address. But it's thewizardswordsuk@gmail.com. Email me, Helen. We'll sort something out. But we'll do it. We'll have me, Jake, and yourself. There'll be 3 of us to make it a bit more, rather than just me and you. And you'll be like, oh, stop asking. But
good. You should, Helen. And I will. If I'm on here, I will try and ask questions to get more information out of you. I wouldn't do anything, to try and belittle any claims or to try and prove you wrong or anything like that. It would genuinely be out of interest. And, if you're interested in it, then I would like to hear about that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did about Binky being in prison as well.
But I'll even crack a few jokes, Helen, as we go. That'll make you relax a bit.
Yeah. No, that would be really interesting. And no, thank you very much for your time. And it's great that you try all these different things out and have different things on here. You know, because obviously you're doing things every day. It does shake things up, does keep things interesting, and I think that that's great. And there's always room for weird stories like.
Oh yes, yep. Wiz Co investigates is going to be a permanent thing. Maybe every 2 weeks, maybe every 4 weeks. I don't know, but as and when it comes up, we'll do whatever it may be.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do some more if you know whatever the next topic is. Let me know, and because that's 2 we've done now, isn't it? We did the Madeleine McCann one, although be it that was rather improvised. I hadn't planned on doing that one. But yeah, I mean,
sometimes they're better like that.
Yeah, I can look into things and I'll try and look at it in a way if that helps.
Yep, I'll have an investigation, see what's going on in the world, see what's worth investigating, and we'll go from there, mate. Happy days.
Yeah, I mean, I know what would be one day to look at would be the murder of Dr. David Kelly. You remember him?
Dr. David?
He was the one from the Iraq War. He was the weapons expert who apparently killed himself. But it looked suspiciously like murder.
Not like, have you seen that one about that woman, suicide, and she got stabbed 20 times?
No. But it was a suicide. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And they got reinvestigated, and the coroner went, yeah, it's suicide.
Wow. Well, there has been, I don't know if you've seen this or if there's anything to it, but there's been, and it is linked to UFO disclosure and space race. But 9 people who've been involved in it have gone missing or died in mysterious circumstances over the past year. So there's definitely something going on there. And for people interested in the Rendlesham story, there's loads of books by people like Georgina Bruni, Nick Pope. Oh yes, I meant to mention this at the beginning. I didn't know until I saw that message that Nick had died. And you know, he was a great guy. He worked for the Ministry of Defence. He was the UFO collector for them. He knew what he was talking about. He was very honest, and you know, it's saddening to hear of his passing. So I would like to just say thanks to Nick and to dedicate the past 2 hours to him for all the work that he did. So thank you, Nick.
Yeah, 100%. I loved Nick Pope. I did. I really, really liked him. Oh, yeah. I was gutted when I found out. Literally today, someone said it. I was like, no.
I found out today as well. I didn't know. But a real shame.
No, I didn't.
Let's hope
rest in peace.
Let's hope they got it wrong and Nick's still alive.
Yeah. And he did pass away. Where was he? With Jesus, or was he with the aliens?
Oh, hang on. Helen said she worked in the next village to Dr. Kelly and spoke with his family members and neighbours around the time. Interesting.
Email me.
Yeah.
Email me. And keep coming out of all this stuff and you don't email me. You leave me hanging.
And yeah, it'd be great to hear Binky's story as well, because I think most people obviously are not going to know what the prison system is like, and it would be interesting just to see, you know, what is it actually like without all the usual macho bollocks of I got in a fight with 10 people and stabbed them, all of this. We don't know any of that.
I was running the prison, mate. Running the prison.
Yeah, I was. The fucking daddy I was.
Yeah. And I found Islam. Uh-oh.
Of course they found Islam, yes. But no, thank you very much.
It was in the toilet, mate.
Yeah, well, it's where he belongs.
That's good.
Thank you very much, everyone here, and I'll see you around next time. Although tomorrow I won't be speaking, of course, because I'll be too knackered.
Yeah,
thank
no
you
worries.
Stay
That's
safe,
all right, mate. You take it easy. Cheers, mate. Take it easy.
Bye.
Right. There we go, ladies and gents. What a wealth of knowledge Jake is. I hope you enjoyed it, folks. Something a bit different, isn't it? You have to let me know. Like I say, when these videos are finished, you can comment below the actual video. If there's anything you want investigating, or if there's anything you want to talk about, or anything in the news, whatever it might be, let me know. And then obviously, if you guys, you know, put forward whatever it may be, then, you know, the channel is all about you lot. It's not just me. It is mostly me. No, it's all me because I'm just awesome. No, but, you know, it's here for you lot. So, you know, if there's a certain story or whatever, or certain whatever, let me know. Let me know. But thank you very much, every single one of you, for watching and spending literally the last 3 hours. Is all good. But oh yeah, I've got to write that down. Jeremy Bamber. I think I wrote that down last time. I need to. But we shall investigate. So yes, I am on tomorrow, 1 p.m. Thursday, 1 p.m. I'll probably be going for an hour and a half. I've got a door to paint and blah blah blah. I won't bore you with the details, but it's all good. So I hope you all stay safe. Have a wonderful evening, and don't forget to join me tomorrow at Thursday, 1 p.m. Stay blessed. And like I say, at the end of every single live stream ever, that is the Wiz's words.